Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Yusufullah here. So welcome everyone to the new members area. Inshallah, we're going to get to work and begin with the first video in a minute. And this presentation was originally recorded back in 2011 when I first disclosed the method, because I've been teaching like this for over 10 years now. And in between the 10 years, people had sent comments and posted on internet forums. Like one sister in particular, she posted at the Al-Maghrib forums, and she says, I learned more in one day than an entire year studying at Harvard. So there was comments like that where students were revealing and telling us that 3 weeks of studies eclipsed all of their previous attempts, years of study combined. So I looked at what is it exactly that makes this method so powerful, and I think I nailed it down, because I released that presentation and it was watched several thousand times, and it then became the basis of a 45-page document that has now been downloaded 122,000 times. So inshallah, when we go to the video, I'll continue speaking with you there. At the end of the video, there's a mind-blowing example. And when you watch that example, you will get an appreciation and you will get a clear understanding of why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose this language for as the medium for his final message, and what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam meant when he said in a famous hadith, "U'titu jawami al-kalim," I was given words of great comprehensive meaning. وَاخْتُصِرَ لِيَ الْكَلَامُ اخْتِصَارًا, and speech was made concise for me. So he's talking about his own God-given aptitude and his talent and his eloquence, because he was more eloquent than everyone. But he's also talking about the language, because the language has these things built into it. So all of this inshallah in the video, and at the end of the video I'll also give you a link where you can download the 45-page document. And students have said that just these 45 pages cover more than an entire year's worth of university curriculum. And then in the second, third, and fourth videos, I'll tell you a little more about myself and what got me into this and how this method was developed. And more importantly, I'll reveal a lot of the system itself right within these 10 days. And the system we have here is a little smart because it moves as quickly as you move. So if you watch the presentation in one day, by the next day, the next video will be unlocked for you. So right now, you have access to the first video, and the next 3 videos are locked. But as you progress through the content, the videos will be unlocked, and conceivably you can get through all of it in 4 days, if that's how quickly you want to move. So with all of that said, let's now move to the presentation, and I'll continue speaking with you there. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Yusufullah here. Inshallah, in this series of short videos, what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw your attention to what I consider the big mistake that practically everyone studying Arabic is currently making, and it's holding them back, and it's really stopping them from reaching their goal, and it's delaying the achievement of results in a big way. And if you're able to get your head around this one big mistake and understand the proper approach, then what this will do is that it will enhance your benefits moving forward by a factor of 16. I'll say that one more time. It will enhance your benefits by 1,600%. So every hour you put in is as if you're putting in 16 hours, not knowing the proper approach. It's a bold promise, and it's huge, and inshallah it's going to change your life. Okay, we're going to dive right in. We have a lot of ground to cover, so I would suggest not to take notes. The slides will be given to you, and you can print out the slides and you can study them. You can ask questions about anything I'm about to mention. I'm going to stick to one core concept. It's this one concept. If you get it, it will make our job a lot easier. And in the second and third and fourth and subsequent videos, we're going to build upon what we cover in this introductory session. So let's dive right in. Okay, the problem is that when most people approach the Arabic language, they begin with a series of textbooks. Okay, and there's many popular textbooks out there, but what's common between all the textbooks is they use one particular method. They progress from the simple to the complex. And you can probably relate to what I'm talking about, that if you open up the textbook, the first and second and third sessions would be talking about phrases, like two-word simple structures, and nominal sentences that have a subject and a predicate, and then how to connect more words together to create bigger sentences. And this is how the textbooks, they move forward from the simple to the complex, which intuitively, upon first glance, it seems like the proper method. And it seems, because we've all been taught that in order to attain any goal, we shouldn't look at it as a project, but instead we should look at it as steps. So when you segment the achievement of a goal into steps, and then gradually proceed to traverse those steps, then this makes it easier to attain the goal. Okay, but what I'm here to tell you is that in the case of Arabic, this is actually a big error. When you approach it from the simple to the complex, what you're doing is you're severely hampering your progress. So this is what people are doing. They're moving from the simple to the complex, and this is true in the case of all popular textbook series that I've seen, and probably also you're familiar with many of those. So this is also true in the university curriculums. If you've taken any college level or university level Arabic course, you'll notice that they begin with the very simple and they gradually advance to the complex. So this approach is what causes the majority of frustration, and this is what I'm trying to communicate to you, that this will never work. And the reason is because it ignores the fundamental nature of the Arabic language and the fact that the Arabic language is an intricate system of conveyance of meaning. And what happens when you go from the simple to the complex is that you feel overwhelmed. Okay, you feel overwhelmed and you think the language is difficult. The reason is because every rule that's introduced to you in a subsequent chapter is not really tied to a big picture, and it just seems like something irrelevant and something random, and you're getting so much of it. You're getting so much of it, and there's no central theme, and there's no core to tie these rules to, so therefore you feel overwhelmed and you think the language is difficult, and you get this sense of too much memorization and this sense of too much disorganization. So all of the rules, they seem random and they seem irrelevant, and the reason is because there's an absence of a big picture up front, and no one is teaching how the language works. And what I'm suggesting is that in the opening days, the teacher needs to focus on how the language works and teach the student the system. And if they can understand that, without too many examples, if they can understand the overall framework, then what happens is this enhances the speed of progress. And then every new detail and every new rule that's introduced, you're tied into the big picture that's given up front, and it really makes sense, and it actually creates motivation, because you get an aha moment and you get an epiphany. Every time you learn something new, you know how it fits into the into the bigger picture. So without this, if you move from the simple to the complex, then what happens is you gain no momentum and you quickly lose interest. And this is why you abandon one series of textbooks and you move to the other, and you move from teacher to teacher, and you get no blessings, you get no barakah in your studies, and you gain no traction. So the fundamental flaw in this method, that it ignores the system that I will be speaking to you in this first video, inshallah. It ignores that the Arabic language is a system for the conveyance of meaning, and it's the most superior system on the planet, and this is documented by scholars such as Ibn Khaldun. So this simple to complex method, what it doesn't do is it doesn't teach how the language works. And the reason I say that is because in Arabic, the majority of meanings do not come from the words. So like if you have a sentence that has 5 words in it, the total number of meanings you will be getting will be much more than 5. So the 5 words will individually be giving you 5 meanings, and on top of that you will have another 10 or 12 or 13. The vast majority of meanings, they don't come from the words. They come from vowels and patterns and grammatical structure, and vowels and patterns and grammatical structure is this system that we're talking about. So without this up front, what happens is that you don't have no big picture, and every new rule and every new detail that's introduced to you, you really can't tie it to anything bigger, so that causes a sense of too much memorization and too much disorganization. And every rule, it just seems random. So the Arabic language is different, and the scholars, they tell us, Ibn Khaldun, he says that it has a core and it has a central theme, and it is the most sophisticated and superior system on the planet for conveyance of meaning. And the reason is because the majority of meanings, they don't come from the words. They come from the vowels. And you see, every language needs some mechanism for determining grammatical structure. And because when you have a verb and you have multiple nouns, you need to be able to tell which of the nouns is the one doing the verb and which of the nouns is the one upon whom the verb is being done. So every language has its method and its way of determining the subject from the object. Like for example, in certain languages, they introduce extra words. So along with the verb and the 2 nouns, you would have an extra word to indicate the subject and an extra word to indicate the object. Other languages, they do it by sequence, so they don't need 5 words, they can convey the meaning in 3. But the thing is, it's very rigid, that the subject needs to be at the very front, and the verb would be in the middle, and this is how English does it. So in Urdu, for example, they say Zaid ne amr ko mara. Zaid hit amr. So the word ne and the word ko are extra words, and they're being used to distinguish between the subject and the object. So the word that's followed by the ne is the subject, and the word that's followed by the ko is the object, and now it doesn't matter which one's first. So this allows flexibility in the word order, but the problem is that you need more than necessary words to convey the meaning. You need 5. You can't convey the meaning in 3 words, you need a total of 5 words. And SVO is the format they use in English, so the subject's at the very front, the verb is in the middle, and the object would be at the end, and this is how English achieves this purpose of differentiating between the subject and the object. Is done by the word order, first, second, third. And if you change the word order, it alters the meaning, and what was originally the object now becomes the subject, and what was originally the subject becomes the object, and you really can't do it in more than one way. So it's very rigid. So it limits you to the amount of ways you can express the meaning. So there's a problem with that too. So now the system that the Arab people have developed, Ibn Khaldun, he's saying that the method the Arab people have developed to determine grammatical meanings is by far the most superior method, because neither does it restrict the speaker to a particular sequence. You can format it in 6 different ways. The verb and 2 nouns, you can format that in 6 different ways, and literally any permutation or any arrangement of those words would be meaningful, and it would convey the same basic meaning. So this gives you benefit of being able to stress, because it's possible your audience or the person you're speaking to already knows that the event occurred and already is aware of who the event happened to, or who did the event, and the only confusion is on the object. So what you can do is you can put the object at the front, and you can format the sentence with the object at the front and then the verb and the subject later, and this would make sense, and it would convey the same meaning if you were to bring the verb at the very front. So there's flexibility in the word order, because it's not being done by the sequence, and neither do we need extra words. There's a third method, which is the most superior method, and inshallah this is what we're going to try to cover in these videos. This system of conveyance of meaning is true both at the word level and at the meaning level. So at the word level, what happens is that the letters combine together, and then particular vowels are added to the words, and these vowels give you more meaning. So in this free video series, inshallah, we're going to expose you to this system, and by the time we're done, you'll have over half the benefits you will ultimately achieve. So what this means is that if you study for 3 years and you gain a considerable amount of benefit throughout the 3 years, what I'm promising you is that in this 1 week, I will give you half of all of those benefits. So you take your 1 week and you take your 3 years minus 1 week, and the benefits here will be equal to the benefits there, which is pretty phenomenal. Like, how is that possible? How can you teach? Like, how is that possible? But inshallah, by the time we're done with this first session, it's going to become very clear to you how this is achieved. Not only that, but it's my contention that this is the only proper way of studying Arabic. So it's not only about speed, but it's actually the only method that will work. And if you try any other method, you're very quickly going to get discouraged, and you'll lose momentum, and you'll drop your studies, and you'll move on to the next series of textbooks and move from teacher to teacher, and it just keeps happening again and again and again. So if you want to gain traction in your studies, and if you want to gain some momentum, and if you want to finally finish your Arabic studies so that you can appreciate the miracle of the Quran, and so that you can communicate in clear Arabic, easy to understand Arabic, and all of those benefits, and when you're standing in your prayer, that you can understand the verses being recited, and you can be impacted by the verses, like the pre-Islamic Arab was impacted, so it becomes the most pleasurable thing in your day. So in order to get to those goals, this is the only method that will take you there, and that is not from simple to complex, but instead with leading with the complex. We're going to lead with the complex and the elaborate. So because until you're made familiar with this system, you gain no traction and you get no momentum. So in order to succeed, you have to lead with the complex. And this is, upon first glance, it seems counterintuitive. And the reason I say it seems counterintuitive, because it's really not counterintuitive. It's just because we're living in this over-specialized world, and everything is so complicated. We don't have any bigger picture about anything, really. So once you gain the big picture, then what happens is everything becomes effortless. And all of the details, they sort of fall in place on their own. And not only that, but every detail that you learn, once you have the big picture and you've mastered the system, then that actually motivates you to move forward, because it creates a light bulb, and a light bulb goes off, and it creates this aha moment, and it happens again and again, and every time it happens, it gets you more excited. Okay, so this method I'm describing to you, it is based on the 80-20 principle, which I will introduce to you in a second, inshallah, and it fully leverages the 80-20 principle, and there's really no other method that does this. And it's how the scholars learn over the centuries. Okay, and it's a feat of staggering genius on part of the medieval grammarians that they were able to do this, that they were able to look into the Arabic language and isolate from it a core and a central theme, and this is what needs to be taught first. So it needs to be taught first, and after that, then you can go into the details and give them gradually. And obviously, it's much more interesting because you're exposed to the aspects that make Arabic the most superior language right at the beginning, and you don't have to wait for the payoff. So it's a front-loaded method. So there's considerable effort in the opening days, but after that, then each week becomes progressively easier, and the payoff increases exponentially. You get the entire big picture up front. And all the new details that then are introduced, they all create epiphany moments, and they motivate you to move forward. And here's the end result. The end result is you end up learning 1,600% faster. So let's look into what is it exactly that makes this so powerful. And this will be by discussing the 80-20 principle. And the reason I feel this is important is because when you understand how something works, then this is fascination. And this is what really guarantees that you achieve your goals. Because on the one hand, we have interest, and interest is to just want something, and fascination is to not only want it, but to know how it's achieved. So you're concerned about the process. So you want it, and you also want to learn how. So we're going to talk about the 80-20 principle, and this is something that you probably heard millions of times, but let me just tell you in advance that knowing something and actually leveraging it is two different things. So please don't dismiss what I'm about to tell you, because it's really, really important. The 80-20 principle states that there's a major imbalance between inputs and outputs, and there's an imbalance between causes and effects, and there's an imbalance between effort and results. What that means is that if you put in 5 hours of effort, it's not necessarily true that you will receive 5 hours of results. Okay, that rarely ever happens. Normally, when you put in a particular amount of effort, then you receive either very less than what you put in, results that some other person could achieve in a single hour, and it took you 5 to do that. So why? Because you weren't spending your time on the most productive things, and a lot of time was being wasted. So you end up achieving very less results. Or you achieve tremendous results, much more than you dreamed of, because you did the right things and you focused on the aspects that had the most broad application. You focused all of your energy and your attention on the most productive things. And this is true for everything. And this principle is everywhere in life. It's in your happiness. They say 80% of your happiness is coming from 20% of your friends. It's in the clothes you wear. You can go check your closet, check your drawers, and you'll notice that 20% of your clothes, you'll be wearing them 80% of the time. It's in the carpets in your house that 20% of the carpets receive 80% of the wear and tear. And if you go look in office buildings, you'll notice that they do this, that someone figured it out and decided to leverage the principle. So now they have modular carpets. So when they want to change the carpet, they don't have to change the whole carpet. They just change the section that gets the more wear and tear, the pathway, and the portions where people walk more. So it's everywhere. 80-20 principle is everywhere. It's in wealth. It's in business. Like if you run a business, then you'll notice that 20% of your prospects will be giving you 80% of your revenue. 20% of your clients will be generating 80% of your profits. It's in education. It's in the work you do day to day. It's just everywhere. And the Arabic language is no different. The Arabic language has a core and it has a central theme that must be taught first. What is this core? It's roughly about 20% of all the rules in the 3 sciences of grammar, morphology, and rhetoric. So these are the 3 sciences that make up classical Arabic. Grammar talks about sentence structure, and it talks about how to distinguish between the roles that the nouns are playing within the sentence. So which of the nouns is the one doing the verb, and which of the nouns is the one upon whom the verb is being done. Morphology is the area of classical Arabic that talks about verbs and how consonants are grouped together and vowels using particular patterns that we'll talk about inshallah in this free series of videos. So the consonants are given vowels, and the vowels are giving you the tense and the voice, and how is that done, and how do you reflect the gender, the plurality, and the person of the one doing the verb, so you know if the one doing the verb is a male or a female, and you're able to properly connect the verb with the pronoun. And all of this is taught in a science called morphology. The third science is rhetoric. And rhetoric is the area, the most advanced area of Arabic that teaches you how to craft impactful and influential speech. So you assess the mindset and the mental capacity and the desires and frustrations and pain of the audience, and you speak accordingly. You craft your speech to best match the requirement of the situation. So this is rhetoric. So if you go through all 3 sciences, you'll notice that there are certain rules that are more important than everything else. And there are certain rules that have the broadest application by far, and these are the fundamentals of the language that have the broadest application. You would expect them, and you would expect to see them in practically every sentence. So these are the aspects of the language that you would expect to encounter in practically every sentence. So here's what I'm telling you. I'm telling you that this 20% of the language that has the broadest application is not to be found at the beginning of the textbooks. Some of it will be here, some of it will be in the middle, and some of it will be at the end. So what you need is you need someone to take all of those aspects, the 20% of the language that has the broadest application, and isolate it, connect it together, and provide it as a system. And inshallah, this is what I'm going to attempt to do in this free series of videos. Okay, so but then we're going to reapply it. We're going to take that 80-20 rule and we're going to reapply it within the 20%. So to get an even more dense inner core. So if you take 20% of 20, that's 4. So what I'm saying is that there's 4%. So if you have like a 200-page textbook, there will be 8 pages within that 200%. And these 8 pages are the pages that have the greatest value from the entire book. So this is true. This is true from everything. So even in the Arabic language, if you go more dense, you can get an inner core of that 20% I just talked about a couple of minutes ago, and that would be 4. And if you learn and master that 4, it gives you 80% of 80, in other words, 64% of benefit. This is mind-blowing. This is mind-blowing. And let me tell you that this could be done in the span of a single week. Okay, or if you want to go a little more easier than 3 weeks. When I teach my students, I normally expose them to this system in the first 3 weeks of class. So by the 3rd week of class, they've already attained half of their benefits they will ultimately achieve. Without getting caught up in the complex math, what this means is that there is an even denser 4% of the language that if you know it, it will give you over half of all your benefits. And like I said, this is mind-blowing. This is what we're going to cover in this free series of videos, inshallah. Okay, so now the system that Ibn Khaldun spoke about, and he said it's the most advanced and the most superior, most sophisticated system on the planet for conveyance of meaning. So now this system, it has a word level and it has a sentence level. So at the word level, it's about taking consonants and combining them together to create meanings. So before doing that, we're going to need to run through the vowels. So first of all, there's 28 letters in the Arabic alphabet, and they're all consonants. And for the purpose of our discussion, we're assuming that everyone watching this knows the Arabic alphabet. And if you're still learning the Arabic alphabet, that's not a problem because there's many places where you can do that. And even on our website, there's a particular tutorial that's free, and it's 21 lessons. You can go through it in a week, and it will teach you the Arabic alphabet. But just assume we know the alphabet. And if we don't know the alphabet, then the system that I'm talking about will still, inshallah, benefit you because most of it's conceptual. Most of it's conceptual, and the actual practice then begins after the system has been given. And so the alphabet is made up of all consonants, and these consonants are then grouped in groups of 3. Okay, so we have the consonants, and the vowels, they're not part of the alphabet. The vowels are sort of introduced on top and underneath the letters, and together they give us the sounds of A, E, I, O, U. And so when the 3 consonants are grouped together, then what that does is it gives you an associated meaning. So you take a noon and a sad and a ra and take those 3 letters, group them together, you get the associated meaning of to help. If you take jim, lam, and sin and group those 3 letters together, it will give you the associated meaning of to sit down. And like this, 28 letters, if you combine them into groups of 3, you get like millions of groups of 3. Every group of 3 has an associated meaning. But the problem is that consonants on their own, they're not pronounceable. Okay, because when people speak, they don't speak in consonants, they speak in syllables. And a syllable is the sound that's produced by combining both a consonant and a vowel. So in order to pronounce those 3 consonants, you're going to need vowels. Okay, but here's the thing. When the vowels are added to the consonants, on the one hand, it makes it a word and therefore makes it pronounceable, because before that you can't pronounce it, you can only imagine it, you can conceptualize it, but you can't pronounce it. But then the vowels are doing more. They're giving you more meaning. They're giving you the tense and the voice. So let's quickly go through the vowels. The first vowel we have is what we call a dhamma, and it corresponds to a O or a U in English. And the second vowel is a fatha, and that one corresponds to an A in English. The third vowel is a kasra, and it corresponds to an E or an I in English. And these are placed above and beneath the letter. So if we have a ba that has the dhamma on it, that equals bu. And with the fatha it equals ba, and with the kasra it equals bi. Bu, ba, and bi. And the absence of vowel is sukun. Because not every consonant will be voweled. Like even in English, what happens is sometimes you have a 3-lettered word, and like fun, like the word fun, and the F at the front will be considered vowel because it's voweled, because it's followed by a U, but the N is not followed by any vowel, so that's like the end of the syllable. We call that sukun. Sukun is the absence of vowel, or you can say it's the consonant that ends the syllable. And then there's one more symbol, which is a shadda, and a shadda is when you have a 2-syllable word in English, and the first syllable ends in the same consonant that the next syllable begins in. Then what happens in English is normally they write the letter twice and they say pretty and funny. So P-R-E-T-T-Y and funny, F-U-N-N-Y. In Arabic, it's not written twice, but instead it's only written once. And this symbol is placed upon it, and it means pronounce the letter twice. So here's the example that I want to talk about, inshallah. If you look at this structure on the screen, it's pronounced istansaru. Istansaru. It looks like a single word. Okay, first of all, I'm going to give you the translation for this structure, and then we're going to dissect it, and we're going to talk about where the meanings are coming from. So this structure on the screen, it means they sought help. So it's actually a full sentence. It looks like a single word, but it's actually a full sentence. So clearly, obviously, there's multiple meanings involved. So let's look at those meanings. They sought help. So first of all, we have the initial help. So where's the initial help coming from? It's coming from the particularness of the three consonants in the middle, the noon, the sad, and the ra, because this is the family, this is the group. Remember a couple of minutes ago I said that the Arabic alphabet is grouped in groups of three. Every three consonants has an associated meaning. So these three letters mean to help. And this is where we're getting the help from. And then the second meaning is the notion of seeking, because the translation is they sought help. It didn't need to be sought. It could have been they helped without the seeking part of it. So where is this notion of seeking coming from? So it's coming from the sin and the ta at the front, which are non-base letters. What they're doing is they're enhancing the meaning, and the verb is becoming advanced. Instead of they helped, it's becoming they sought help. And how am I so sure that the noon and the sad and the ra are giving us the meaning of help? Because if we substitute those three letters with three other letters, the meaning changes, everything else stays the same, it becomes they sought food. For example, the letters of food are ta, ayn, and mim, like the word ta'am means food. So if I say istat'amu, notice how it rhymes. Istat'amu, then the translation of the structure becomes they sought food. So clearly the help is coming from the particularness of the three consonants in the middle. The notion of seeking is coming from the sin and the ta, because if I drop those letters from the front and I say nasaru, it means they helped. So the seeking is clearly coming from the sin and the ta. The third meaning that's contained within the structure is the past tense, because the translation is they sought help, and it's not they are seeking help, and it's not they seek help, and it's not they will seek help. So where's the past coming from? So the past is coming from the absence of a particular prefix at the front. Okay, because I know this because in order to respond accurately to the question where is the past tense coming from, you would need to know the present and future tense verb, which again we're going to teach you inshallah in this introductory theory. So this present tense verb, very briefly for the purpose of our discussion, it needs to begin with either a ya, a ta, a hamza, or a noon, and the hamza has a fatha. So either yastan, tastan, astan, or nastan. In the absence of those four beginnings, this verb on the screen cannot be an imperfect verb. It can't be a present tense verb. It can't be a future tense verb. Okay, it's not a command verb either, because the command verb has a particular vowel on the middle letter, which is different than the one we have now. Istansiru. If you say istansiru, it means seek help when you're speaking to a group of males. So just that change in that one single vowel will transform the verb from being a past tense verb and make it a command verb. But since we don't have a kasra, instead we have a fatha, so this is how we know. So where did the third meaning come from? It came from the absence of the prefix at the front and also the fatha on the sad. Those two together contributed and pinpointed the translation as a past tense verb. The next meaning is the active voice, because what we have on the screen translates as they sought help, and it could have been help was sought from them. In other words, the seekers are someone else, and the people we're talking about are not the seekers, but actually the object, or the ones from whom the help was sought. Okay, now that one would have different vowels. Everything else would be the same. It would be ustun. So the vowel at the front would be a different vowel. That one would be a different vowel. So the question is, where did the active voice come from? And the answer is, it came from pure vowels. So is this vowel, the kasra on the hamza at the front, and this vowel, the ta one, and the sad one, all three vowels together contributed and gave us the active voice. So you might be asking yourself, what is that hamza at the front doing? It's not circled, and neither is there's an X on top of it. So what is that? What is that? So let me tell you that is at the front, that's what we call an enabling hamza. What it's doing is it's allowing pronunciation with the sukoon, because apart from the hamza, the first letter, the sin, has a sukoon, and you can initiate pronunciation with the sukoon. At least in Arabic you can. And in many Eastern languages they don't have that. So this is why you hear people, they say is school. Instead of school, they say is school, or they say sakul, because they have no instance of that. So that's like an advanced secret for you. If you were wondering why people do that, it's because they don't have that in their language. So they have this hamza at the beginning, and it enables the pronunciation, and it's used for initiating pronunciation, because otherwise you can't do it. So at any rate, we have here the first meaning, the initial help coming from the noon sadra. We have the second meaning, which is the notion of seeking, and that's coming from the sin and the ta, highlighted in green. And then we have the past tense, and that's coming from the absence of the letter that needed to be there for present future, and also the fatha on the sad. Both of those together contributed and gave us the past tense. And the active voice came from the pure vowels. Okay, now the next three meanings. So we're already at four. So our fifth one, sixth one, and seventh one is to do with the pronoun, because the translation is they, and the they here is referring to a group of males, not females, because there will be another way to do it for females. So all of that is coming from the wow. So that wow is giving us, that wow is telling us that we're talking about males. And number two, that wow is indicating that it is a group of males. And number three, we're talking about them. So it's third person. It's not you sought help talking to a group of males, but instead we're talking about a group of males. So this is 7 meanings on the screen. So let's go through them one by one. Number one, the initial help, and that came from the noon sadra. Number two, the notion of seeking, and that came from the sin and the ta at the front. Number three, the past tense, and that came from the absence of the prefix plus the fatha on the sad. And number four, the active voice, that came from the pure vowels, because there would be a different configuration of vowels to indicate passive. The fifth meaning was the masculine gender of the subject. The sixth meaning was the plurality of the subject. And the seventh meaning was the third person aspect of the subject. All three of those last meanings came from where? Came from the wow at the end. So what this is very comprehensive, because what looked like a single word is actually giving you 7 meanings. Let me tell you that the majority of those meanings are not coming from the word. They're coming from the pattern, and they're non-word meanings. So I made a claim earlier, and I said in Arabic the majority of meanings do not come from the words, but instead they come from vowels, and they come from patterns. So I just highlighted that for you at the word level. Inshallah, in the next video, we will talk about this happening at the sentence level. And this is the system that is the most powerful system on the planet, and this is comprehensiveness. Because what looked like a single word was actually conveying 7 meanings. English tried to do it, they needed 3 words. They couldn't do it in what looked like a single word. They needed 3 words. So they said they sought help. And even that wasn't precise, because the they did not differentiate between males and females. But whereas our example, the one we gave, was clearly males, because if I wanted to talk about they group of females, I would have done it differently. Okay, so as you see, very powerful. And this is what the Prophet ﷺ meant when he said, أُعْتِيتُ جَوَامِعَ الْكَلِمِ, I was given words of great comprehensive meaning. وَاخْتُصِرَ لِيَ الْكَلَامُ اخْتِصَارًا, and speech was made concise for me. So he was talking about his own aptitude and his own talent, because he was more eloquent than most. But he's also talking about the language, because the language has these things built into it. And when you know this, then you end up learning more in a single day than you might have learned in a whole year. And this is one student that drove 22 hours from Mississippi to take her 6-month intensive. She made a comment, and she said, because of that, in one day of class, I learned more than I learned in an entire year studying at Harvard. So what you need, she says, what you need in a class is someone to explain to you how the language works. So to recap, the big mistake that almost everyone is making with regards to their Arabic studies is they start from the simple and they gradually progress to the complex without being exposed to the system and the big picture up front. And what I'm here to do, inshallah, in this free series of videos is I want to provide you as much of that big picture as I can. And in this first session, what I did is I gave you an idea of how it happens at the word level, okay, or more to do with the approach. Okay, here we weren't teaching you much about the actual language, but instead we were speaking more about the approach, because it's a logic, it's a limitation, it's a constraint that's holding you back, and the amount of effort is easy, people can do that, but the belief needs to be corrected first, because the logical constraint is much more difficult to fix than the physical constraint. Okay, so hopefully, inshallah, I was successful in doing that. And inshallah, in the next video, we'll move forward with actual aspects of the system, speaking about the parts of speech, and we'll introduce you to the heart of the Arabic language, inshallah, in the next video. And what I'd like is if you can post a comment below and give me some feedback on how you found this. This will help me, and inshallah, I will be able to better develop the next piece. So I'll see you again in a couple of days. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Okay, so now that we're done with the first presentation, as promised, I'm going to share with you the 45-page document. that came as a result of the presentation when I first delivered it back in 2011. Now, these 45 pages were, they're a transcript of the presentation you just watched, but they're much more than a transcript. And to date, the PDF has been downloaded over 122,000 times. So I would suggest that you read through it and really study it. Inshallah, this will prepare you for the second, third, and fourth videos that I will begin sharing with you as soon as tomorrow. And with that said, I look forward to speaking with you soon. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Yusufullah here. So welcome everyone to the second presentation in this free series of videos. Inshallah, in this presentation, towards the end of it, I'm going to explain to you the 4 stages of growth that you need to get through in order to successfully reach your goal in understanding the Quran and being able to appreciate its miracle. And we'll tell you their names. What are those 4 stages? The startup phase, the initial growth, rapid growth, followed by continuous growth. And we'll tell you what kind of behavior is required from you in order to successfully move from one stage to the next. Okay, but before that, we're going to quickly recap what was covered in the previous video and then teach you some actual content. I'm going to go through the parts of speech. Okay, in Arabic, the parts of speech, I'm going to develop the word, the sentence, and the phrase. And we're going to leave some of it for the third and the fourth video. So again, I would suggest that you don't take furious notes. There's really no need for that because all of the content is being provided to you in numerous formats. Okay, the whole point of giving it to you in videos is so that you can download the video eventually. After you've watched it once, then the download link should appear underneath this video once you come back to the page, and then you can watch it more than once. And this is how learning happens. This is how I do it. Okay, because this is all core theory. And this is by far the most important aspects of the language that you need to know in order to begin any reading. Right? So it's worth listening to and watching more than once. Okay, so with that said, you don't have to take any notes, and there's also the transcripts, and there's also the 45-page report. So when you combine all of these resources, you will know it very well. Okay, and this kind of material is the type of material you need to actually overlearn. So there is going to be some overlap between what we're presenting today and what's in the document, and I've thought about this. Okay, there might be some people that don't like overlap, but I think the vast majority of people really appreciate it when the same concept is introduced more than once in different styles and different ways using different analogies. Then this really helps to solidify, and it helps to get you to a level where you're at unconscious competence, because they say there's 4 stages of learning. The first is unconscious incompetence. Okay, and this is where you don't even know what you don't know. Like, and the second, and I'll give you examples for this. The second stage of learning is when you're consciously incompetent. Okay, and now you know that you don't know. Okay, the third stage is when you're consciously competent, and the final stage is unconsciously competent. Okay, the example is that when you're learning to drive, okay, before you ever learned to drive, before you ever took a lesson with an instructor, you had no idea what the clutch was, and you had no idea that you have to put it in gear, and this is how you park, and this is how you signal, and this is how you turn. So you didn't even know that those things were necessary. So that was unconscious incompetence. And then once you started taking lessons, at that point, you were taught all of these things, these elements that are required in order to drive properly. Okay, and then eventually when you got your license, and you drove for some time, then you became consciously competent. At first you were consciously competent, and then eventually unconsciously competent. That you drive and you can do many other things and still drive and not have any problem with that. But the same people that are unconsciously competent when it comes to driving, when they're parallel parking, then they have to turn the radio off, and they have to tell the kids to be quiet, and they have to, if their friend is speaking to them, be quiet. Okay, I need to concentrate, because they haven't reached that level of unconscious competence when it comes to parallel parking. Okay, so if you want to read books in Arabic, like the tafsir of Imam al-Alusi, or one of the books by Imam Ibn Taymiyyah or Imam al-Ghazali, and you want to lie on your bed and be able to read 100 pages without being overwhelmed at all, then you have to reach this level of unconscious competence. Okay, and the vowels are not written in the books. Okay, we mentioned in the previous video that the majority of meanings in Arabic do not come from words, but instead they come from vowels. But yet, when you open up the books, the vowels aren't there. So how does that make any sense? Right? So this is, you need to get to that level. And the other example I'd like to give is of typing. that most people have reached a level of unconscious competence when it comes to typing. So they can type very quickly without ever having to look at the keyboard and with making very few mistakes. So this is what we want for you when it comes to the study of Arabic, that you can read the books by the scholars and be reasonably confident that you're not making a mistake, and you can do it quickly, and you can read it as easily as you read books in English. So let's quickly recap the big mistake. Okay, when most people approach the study of Arabic, they start with simple structures and they gradually try to reach the advanced. And what they're doing really is they're taking a sophisticated and complex system and breaking it up into small little portions and trying to tackle each one with slight improvements in every area. And this will never work. This is not how it's done. It's like within the Arabic language, there is an inherent simplicity. And what we need to do is we need to identify that and learn that first. Okay, and what it is theory. It's basically the mechanism of how the meanings are conveyed. And I'm not talking about the vocabulary, I'm talking about the non-word meanings. Because what looks like a single word in Arabic can often convey 7 meanings. And this was presented to you in the previous video. So when you understand the non-word meanings, the overall framework of how the language works, then at that point, you have the inherent simplicity. Like, it's not very complicated. Okay, it could be done in the span of a few short days. And this is what we're doing in this free series of videos. So the simple to the complex approach is the big mistake, and this is what causes the majority of frustration. This is why people abandon textbooks and move to another series of textbooks, and when they move from teacher to teacher, and they gain no traction and no blessings. Our approach to studying Arabic, it starts with the big picture first. Okay, the human emotions and the facial expressions analogy, which I'll give to you later in this video. And then once we, and the big picture really, it's really the 4% of the language that gives you over half of all of your benefits presented as a big picture. And it focuses on the aspects that have the most broadest application, the fundamentals of the language that you would expect to encounter in practically every sentence. And 80-20 is prevalent throughout, in all facets of life. It's in nature, and it's also in human behavior, and it's in everywhere you look. Okay, they say 20% of people account for 80% of crime. Okay, 20% of people are holding 80% of wealth. 20% of, you name it, will be responsible for 80% of whatever the cause is that it produces. And the Arabic language is no different. Within the Arabic language, there is a small amount of rules that if you know them, you'll get 80% of all of your benefits. And then when you go more dense into this 20, there's an even denser inner core, which is what we're teaching right now. The 4% of the language that gives you over half of all of your benefits. Why do we do all of this? We do this with one purpose in mind, and that is that we can start a reading text as soon as possible. Okay, and this is extremely important, because the minute the book begins, several things happen. First of all of the grammar comes to life. So the theory you're learning it with the purpose of implementing it as soon as possible. And this is like within days, you're reading an actual book in Arabic, and then every word, every sentence, and every phrase in that book becomes an example of what was taught earlier. So when you see the repeated application of it, then your initial understanding of the theory gets stronger and stronger. Okay, because with every subsequent application of the principle, your understanding of it cannot decrease. It can only get more clear, and it can only increase. And the enthusiasm level of the student goes through the roof. Okay, because you're getting the payoff straight away. You don't have to wait for the payoff. And this is what we do. So in the first few days, we're giving the big picture of how the language works, immediately with the intention of following up with the reading text. The minute the book begins, the enthusiasm level of the student goes through the roof, and all of that theory that was taught earlier now comes to life with real examples from the Quran. Okay, so there's 2 sciences that we start with, and the third science we introduce a little later. And those 2 sciences are sarf and nahu. Sarf means morphology and nahu means grammar. Sarf is to do with the patterns. Okay, so the example that was given in the previous video was a verb, and there was letters in there. There was 3 base letters, and we were getting a meaning from the 3 letters. And then there was more meaning coming from the pattern, which involved the 2 letters at the front, and also the waw at the end, and also the particular voweling configuration. So this is all studied in a science called sarf. Okay, so sarf is the science of classical Arabic that deals with patterns of vowelization and non-base letters that convey tense, voice, and added connotations. So in one sentence, this is exactly what we were highlighting in that example. Okay, so there was one meaning that was coming from the actual consonants, and you get that from the dictionary. The other 6 meanings do not come from the dictionary, they come from knowing sarf. So now, obviously, you can see how important this is. You see, it makes up 30% of total comprehension. And this is the science that the scholars have always attached importance to. It comes in the biography of Imam Nawawi, who was one of the greatest scholars of this ummah, that he used to split up his day into 12 portions. And he used to spend time studying 12 different sciences with his various teachers. And amongst those sciences was Sahih Muslim. And amongst those sciences was Al-Muhazzab, which is a book in Shafi'i fiqh. And he was studying tafsir, and he was studying hadith, and it comes وَدَرْسًا فِي التَّصْرِيف. And one of his 12 sciences that he was studying was the science of Arabic morphology, which is the same science that we highlighted to you in the previous video, explained in the report. And our third presentation is going to be pure sarf. Okay, verb patterns explained, that's the name of the presentation. And inshallah, I think you're going to really enjoy that. It's a 30-minute video, and we'll unlock it for you as soon as tomorrow, provided that you finish watching this one. Okay, and sarf also speaks about the designating endings, the designated letters that are appended to the end of the verb, and the purpose of that letter at the end of the verb is to give you the gender, the plurality, and the person of the one doing the verb. So you know that the one doing the verb is a male or a female, and you know that the one doing the verb is one or more than one, or are you talking to them, are you talking about them, or are you yourself the one doing the verb? So that all comes from the end. So depending on what letter you put at the end of the verb, you'll know the one doing the verb, basically. So in the istansaru example, it was the waw. Okay, that waw was giving us three things. It was telling us that this is a group. It was also telling us that this is a group of males, and also that we're talking about them. And it's not you, group of males, but instead it's they, group of males. So all of that was coming from the letter. So apart from the waw, there's other letters that could be appended to the end of istansara. Like if I put a noon at the end and I say istansarna, then it means they, group of females, sought help. And if I put another letter, it could mean I sought help. Okay, now the purpose here is not to tell you the total or what are they. That will be then, inshallah, in the next presentation, in the third one. We'll give you the actual total, and we'll fill the slots for that particular verb, the past tense verb. Right? Okay, but sarf is the science that deals with this. So two things, patterns and endings. Okay, so just remember that, patterns and endings. So everything to do with patterns, everything to do with endings, and when I say endings, I'm talking about verbs specifically. The last letter that comes at the end of the verb, the purpose of that is to give the gender, the plurality, and the person of the one doing the verb. So sarf is a science that talks about all of that. And then grammar is when you take the words and combine them together. Because when people speak, they don't speak in verbs. It's not all you do. There's other elements that are required in order to speak, because when people speak, they don't speak in single words, they speak in sentences, and sentences are made up of words and phrases. So how to connect the words together to make meaningful sentences? What are the sanctioned methods of connecting words together? Okay, and you get more than what you started off with, which is the whole purpose. Remember, in the previous video we said the majority of meanings in Arabic do not come from words. I'll repeat that one more time. The majority of meanings in Arabic do not come from words. They come from vowels, they come from patterns, and they come from grammatical structures. So patterns is discussed in sarf. Vowels, when I say vowels, I'm talking about single vowels. Single vowels, and just keep that at the back of your mind. We're going to return back to it later. Single vowels. So like just by the change of one single vowel, you'll introduce more meaning. Okay, and this is grammar. This is the subject matter of grammar. Grammar will tell you what kind of change, single vowel change, can result in what kind of meaning. Okay, so it's all about words, sentences, and phrases. And here's the definition of grammar, a working definition. The more precise definition, you'd need more for that. And we give that to you at a later stage. So grammar is the science of classical Arabic that teaches you how to arrange words to make meaningful sentences in ways that are sanctioned by the language. So sometimes when you take two words together and connect them, the result is a phrase. And sometimes when you take two words and connect them together, the result is a full sentence. You see? So words, sentences, and phrases is the subject matter of grammar. And to give you a better understanding of this, let's go ahead and map the language for you. So we'll start with the most basic, and we'll end up with the three things that I just listed for you: words, sentences, and phrases. And we'll do this on the next slide. So the most basic sound that comes out of the human mouth is called lafz. And in English we call it an utterance. And this is regardless of whether it's even meaningful or meaningless. It doesn't matter. Like any sound, like a random noise, like just IU, or just something that a person speaks. Or you could say like the word Pepsi, for example. That's the name of a beverage. Before the advent of this now famous beverage, if anyone spoke that word Pepsi, it would have been meaningless. But it's still a love because it's spoken. So anything that comes out of the human mouth is called a lafz. And if it's meaningful, then this is called mawdu'. Mawdu' means coined. In other words, it underwent a process where the earliest natives of that language took that particular sound or syllable configuration and assigned it a meaning. So they said this particular object, whenever we want to refer to it, we'll call it a tree. So the word tree is an example of mawdu'. Okay, and then we have muhmal on the other side. And muhmal, meaningless, obviously we're not going to talk about it. We're just listing it for classification purposes. All of our focus is on the right side of the diagram. And mawdu' would either be one word, single, which is known as a kalima, or it's going to be more than one, which is compound. And again, compound is two or more words, not like a grocery list. I mean, like, you don't take two or more words and just line them up side by side. They have to be arranged in a way that's sanctioned by the language. And then this could result in a full sentence, or it could result in less than a sentence. Okay, if it's a full sentence, we call that a jumla. And if it's less than a sentence, then that's a phrase. So the murakkab could be mufid, or it could be ghair mufid. Mufid means beneficial, and ghair mufid means it's non-beneficial. Okay, now obviously non-beneficial here doesn't mean that it's meaningless, because we've already talked about that, and that's the one at the top. And we mean two or more words connected together that do not convey a particular benefit. So there is some benefit. Obviously the words mean something, and the arrangement has its own benefit, but it's lacking a particular benefit. So there's a benefit that's affirmed in the sentence, and that same benefit is negated from the phrase. So what is that? So let me go ahead and tell you. Okay, if the two or more words are connected together in a manner that conveys to the audience a benefit upon which silence is appropriate, then that's a sentence. And if it's not conveying a benefit upon which silence is appropriate, then that would be ghair mufid, what in English we call a phrase. So after doing all of this, we end up with three things. We have the word, the sentence, and the phrase. And this is all of grammar, because when people speak, they speak in sentences, and sentences are made up of words and phrases. So if you know everything there is to know about the word, and you know everything there is to know about the sentence, and you know everything there is to know about the phrase, then pretty much that's all of grammar. So in this presentation, we're going to develop for you the word. And inshallah, in video 3, we'll speak specifically about the verb, and that will be more of a sarf presentation, and then we'll get back to grammar. And in the 4th presentation, we're going to give you a lot about how the nouns are used, the multiple ways a noun could be used in a sentence. And all of these topics that are being taught here are also in the 45-page document. So I would strongly suggest that you print that out and read that document, and don't worry about the overlap, because what you want here is you want to reach the level of unconscious competence, and in order to do that, you have to overlearn. Okay, so I just said that one more time, and let's continue forward now with developing the word. So this is parts of speech. Now in English, when we say parts of speech, we're talking about nouns and verbs and pronouns and adverbs. Okay, so most people are familiar with those terms, like what is a noun, what is a pronoun, what is an adjective, what is an adverb. And I'll also remind you of what they are here in case you don't remember or you need your memory refreshed. So that's not a problem. Okay, now we have 3 parts of speech in Arabic. So I can go ahead and list for you the 3 parts of speech. What are their names? And I can go ahead and define them with some examples. That would be an inferior approach. I mean, you're very likely to forget it if I do it in that way. So what I'll do is I'll tell you what they are, but I won't define them. Not now, not yet. But instead I'll spend time on the English parts of speech. Okay, and there are more. There are like 8 or 9 in English, as opposed to the 3 we have in Arabic. And I'll take those 9 and I'll assign them to the ones we have in Arabic, and this will give you a very clear understanding of what the parts of speech are, in a way that you'll never forget them. And then after I've done all of that, then I'll go ahead and define them one by one. So let's proceed with this. Okay, here are their names in Arabic, and if you've studied grammar in the past, then you will be familiar with these 3 terms. One of them is called ism. Okay, the other one's fi'l, and the third one's harf. And I won't even tell you what they are. Let's proceed now with the English parts of speech, and we'll return back to these in a minute. Okay, so in English we have the noun, and the noun is an entity, or like a place, person, or a thing. And then we have pronouns, which are smaller words, which are used to refer to nouns when the nouns have already been mentioned. So you say Zaid came in the house, and then he went to the kitchen, and then he turned on the sink, and then he poured a glass of water, and then he. So you would say Zaid once, but after every subsequent reference to the person would not be through the name, but instead the pronoun would be used. And then there's third-person pronouns, there's first-person pronouns, he, they, she, you, I, we, many types of pronouns. And then the third part of speech in English is an adjective. And an adjective is a word that's used to modify a noun. So like the word small, or the word big, or the word lazy, or the word happy. So they modify the noun. So when you say man, it's applicable on billions of people. Every man would be included when you say the word man. But when you say tall man, then you've removed a certain percentage of men that are below a height that you've determined to be above average. So anything above average would be tall. So you've reduced the number by half. So this is what we mean by modifying. So every adjective, it modifies a noun. Okay, and then we have adverb, which is the part of speech in English that modifies other than noun. Okay, so like a verb, for example. So we have quick, we have came, and we have came quickly. So the word quickly would be an adverb, or it can modify another adjective. Like for example, a person is tall, a person is very tall. So the word very is an adverb because it's modifying tall. Because even within tall, we have various degrees. So if you want to pinpoint and narrow it down further, you would be using an adverb. So the first modification happens with the adjective, and the next modification happens with an adverb. So an adverb is a part of speech in English that modifies other than noun. And by other than noun, I mean both adjectives, okay, and verbs, and other adverbs, like came very quickly. So over there, quickly is modifying came, and very is modifying quickly. Okay, the fifth part of speech is verb, and verb is an action plus tense, past, present, and future. And then preposition, which is the small part of speech. In, on, to, from are examples of prepositions, and they're generally brought in order to express meanings or express attributes of the upcoming word that otherwise cannot be understood. So you say, I traveled, and then you want to mention the origin of the travel. Okay, and then you want to mention the destination of the travel. So you can't say, I traveled Basra, Kufa. Because if you say, I traveled Basra, then that could mean you took a tour. And that's not the intended meaning. The intended meaning is the travel initiated from Basra, and the travel culminated on Kufa. So you would say, I traveled from Basra to Kufa. So from is a preposition, to is a preposition, because what it did is it brought out a meaning of the upcoming word, an attribute of the upcoming word, in other words, to be an origin that would otherwise not be understood. And same thing with the Kufa, the to, it expressed that Kufa was the actual destination of the travel. So to be an origin, to be a destination are attributes, and these attributes would not have been understood if I did not use the prepositions from and the preposition to, and every preposition is like that, if you think about it. Okay? And then we have conjunctions. Conjunctions are, again, they're small words, generally just 2 or 3 letters, like and, A-N-D, or the word or the word nor, or even the word but is a conjunction. The purpose of a conjunction is to allow abbreviation. So you want to say Zayd and Amr came. So you don't have to repeat yourself. You don't have to mention the verb twice. You can just mention the verb once and use the conjunction and to connect the 2 nouns together, because those 2 nouns because those 2 nouns are in the same role. Together they're forming the subject of the verb. So Zayd and Amr came, or you can say Zayd came not Amr. So what you've done is you've affirmed the coming for Zayd, and you've negated it from Amr with the not, without having to repeat the verb twice. So you see, a conjunction is a part of speech in English that allows abbreviation, so you don't have to repeat yourself more than once. Okay, and then finally we have the article, which is the, okay, definite article, or we have an indefinite article, a, and I think that's pretty self-explanatory. So we have these 8 parts of speech in English. So now, in order to understand our 3 that we have in Arabic, what we're going to do is we're going to assign these. So the first 4, the noun, the pronoun, the adjective, and the adverb, are what we call in Arabic ism. Okay, so ism is the part of speech that includes all 4 of these. So every place, person, thing, every pronoun, every word that modifies, describes, and quickly and swiftly, and words like that, they're all included within ism. And then we have verb, which corresponds 100% to what the English, our Arabic one is fi'al, and this corresponds 100% to what the English people call verb. And then we have the 3 smaller ones, the preposition, the conjunction, and the article, and they're all classified under the 3rd category, which is harf. So now I think you have a 70-80% understanding of what these 3 are. And you see how helpful it was for me to do this, to take the 8 English parts of speech and refresh your memory on them. Okay, it took me 5 minutes, but I think those 5 minutes were probably the best 5 minutes that I could have spent in this presentation in order to clarify for you exactly what the 3 parts of speech are in Arabic, instead of just starting directly with ism, fi'l, and harf. Okay, so now, once we have the three parts of speech, let's go ahead and give precise definitions. So, in order to do this, what you'll need to do is you'll have to look at the commonalities between between the 8 that were assigned on the previous slide. So if you looked at the bottom 3, the conjunction, the prepositions, the conjunctions, and the articles, and you try to look for a commonality between them, you'll notice that all of them express meanings in something else, as opposed to having a meaning in itself. Okay, and this is what characterizes a harf. Every harf has this. Okay, and I gave you an example of the from. Okay, because if they ask you what is the meaning of from, so you would say that from is a preposition that indicates an origin. So is it the from that's the origin? Or is it the upcoming word that's the origin? Obviously it's the upcoming word. So from indicated on a meaning in something else. As opposed to if I say tree. Because if I say tree, I'm talking about the object itself that has the trunk and has the branches and the leaves. That is the tree. So it is the tree which is the tree. But it's not the from which is the origin. You see? Okay, so this is true for from, and I can give you a second example, and. And is a conjunction that indicates on gathering. So is it the and that's gathered, or is it the words on the two sides of the and that are gathered together in a single ruling? So obviously it's the Zayd and the Amr together that are being gathered with the and. Zayd and Amr came. So this is a meaning in something else, right? And the indicates on specificity, a indicates on generality, and specificity is a meaning in something else. Generality is a meaning in something else. It's the upcoming word that's being specified. It's the upcoming word that's being generalized. Okay, so harf indicates on a meaning in something else. Okay, so that's the definition. Harf is the part of speech in Arabic that indicates on a meaning in something else. How easy is that? So once you've done that, then that means that the other two, the ism and fi'l, are parts of speech that indicate on a meaning in themselves. It's true for the ism, it's true for the fi'l, and then we'd have to look for a difference between them. So we'd say the fi'l has tense and the ism doesn't. So now we have all three definitions. So here's the definition of the verb. The fi'l is the part of speech in Arabic that indicates on a meaning in itself and is also linked to time. And ism is the part of speech in Arabic that indicates on a meaning in itself and is not linked to time. Okay, now what we do is we take all three of them, the ism, the fi'l, and the harf, and we subclassify them. And we take the ism, because the ism is very broad. It includes nouns, it includes pronouns, it includes adjectives, and it includes adverbs. And if you look at the reality of the noun and compare it to the reality of the adverb, then they're not the same. There's like big differences between a noun and an adverb, to the point that the English people chose to keep them separate. So in Arabic, they've been clumped together. So you've seen them together, so now it's only appropriate that you see them separate. So this will be done through subclassification process. And I'm going to leave that here. Okay, in our premium program, we do this quite a bit, and we give you additional vocabulary that will then be used when the reading book begins, so we can draw on the concepts. Okay, but for the sake of time, I'm going to leave this, and we're going to move to the fi'l. The fi'l is the verb. And in Arabic, there's only three kinds of verbs. There's the verb that indicates on the past tense, that the action has already occurred. The example is kataba. Kataba means wrote, and this is called the madi verb. The next verb is the one that indicates on both the present and the future tense, and in Arabic this is called the mudari', which we call the imperfect verb. So perfect, imperfect. Past tense verb, present, future tense verb. Perfect means the action's already occurred. Imperfect means that it's either ongoing or it's yet to begin, and mudari includes both. So we have a single word that could convey both meanings, and obviously the context would distinguish which one's which. Okay, and then the third kind of verb is the amr, which is the command verb, and the example of that is ishrab, and drink. Now if you look at the Arabic words kataba, that's the three consonants, nothing additional. It's just the three consonants, and each letter has a vowel, a fatha on it. And if you look at yansuru, it's a little larger. It has the three letters, the noon, the sad, and the ra, and it has a particular letter at the front, yan. And if you look at ishrab, it has a hamza at the front and has a sukoon at the end. So all of these things are relevant. It's the particular vowel configuration, and in the case of the middle verb, it's the added letter, the prefix, that distinguished it from the other one. Because like in a book, you wouldn't have any vowels. Remember I told you that in classical books there's no vowels. So, but you have the letter, and the letter is actually represented with script. So kataba doesn't have a letter at the front. Yansuru has the ya at the front. So that's how you would know which one's which. Okay? And then there's other methods. It's like typing. Like I said, you have to reach that level of unconscious competence in order to properly be able to appreciate this. Okay, right now it might be a little fuzzy, like how are these things figured out? But at any rate, the purpose right here is to classify the verb into three categories. We have the perfect, the imperfect, and the command, the madi, the mudari, and the amr. And now let's move on to the harf. The harf, okay, it included those three categories, which we listed in English, the preposition, the conjunction, and the article. Okay, but that's not how it's classified in Arabic. But instead, in Arabic, we're going to classify it based on whether it induces change on the upcoming word or whether it doesn't. So we have the governing agent and we have the non-governing agent. So the big question at this stage is, what does it mean to govern and what does it mean to not govern? This is the mechanism, and this is probably the most important part of this presentation. And if you're over-analytical, or if you tend to overanalyze, then I would suggest you to pay attention now, because this is the type of thing that you need to overanalyze, right? And all the previous stuff wasn't really, it was all leading up to this. So we have the harf, which is the governing agent, and the non-governing agent. So what does it mean to govern? What does it mean to not govern? Okay, so let's go ahead. Okay, human beings experience emotional states. People make us happy, angry, sad, frustrated, embarrassed. And all of these emotions are then reflected on our face. So by looking at the human being's face, you can tell whether they're happy, or they're angry, or they're sad, or they're frustrated, or they're embarrassed. Why does that happen? It happens because of interaction. So Arabic words behave in a similar fashion. Okay, Arabic words behave in a similar fashion. Words influence words. So they interact with one another, and they cause the upcoming word to experience a grammatical state. So try to understand the analogy that human beings experience emotional states, and these emotional states are reflected on the face, and it's induced by the interaction. Similarly, Arabic words experience grammatical states, and these states are reflected on the last letter. So by the particular vowel on the last letter of the noun, you're able to tell what state it's experiencing, and it's the preceding word that causes that. So the preceding word induces the change on the upcoming word. So certain harfs do this, and other harfs don't do this. So there's a harf that would induce a change on the upcoming word, and there's a harf that won't do that. And I'll give you a couple of examples on the next slide. Okay, now unlike human emotions, which are endless, grammatical states in Arabic are just three. There's only three states that an ism can experience. And those three states have names, and I'll give you a second analogy to make this very crystal clear. And the names of the three states are rafa, nasab, and jar. So the ism can experience rafa, nasab, or jar. And notice that I've lined them up with the three pronoun examples, he, him, and his. If you can understand the difference between he, him, and his, you have a 70% understanding of what rafa, nasab, and jar are. Okay, so what is he, him, and his? This is the same meaning being conveyed in three different ways in English. So when you're referring to a male in the third person, you have a choice. You're going to use between either he, him, and his. But it's not really a choice, because you have to use the right one at the right time. So when the pronoun is intended to be the subject of a verb, you would say he came. And when the pronoun is intended to be object of the verb, you would say I saw him. And when the pronoun is intended to be used in a possessive structure, you would say his pen. Or you would say the pen is his. The pen is his in that format. So at any rate, so this in English only happens in pronouns. So like in a noun, if I was using a noun in different ways, I wouldn't change the noun. It would be the same noun. I would say the house fell. I entered the house. Door of the house. So house, house, house. But in Arabic, what would happen is the word house would actually change. And the change wouldn't be the whole word. It would only be the last letter. Okay? So like if I want to say the house fell, I would say saqat al-baytu. And if I want to say I entered the house, I would say dakhaltul bayta. So dakhaltu, I'd use the particular verb form that indicates on I. The conjugation that has the last letter, the tu at the end, that means I. And then the noun, house, would be listed third, and it would have a fatha on the last letter. So al-baytu, al-bayta, and in the third example, babul bayti, door of the house, al-bayti. So the word is changing. In English, it's not changing. The house fell down, I entered the house, door of the house, 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 house. But notice in Arabic, we're saying saqat al-baytu, dakhaltu al-bayta, and babul bayti. So these are the three states. And the vowel that's used to distinguish the states is a different vowel. So in rafa, it's generally reflected by dhamma. And nasab is generally reflected with fatha. And jar is reflected with kasra. So this is it. This is the process that's likened to human emotions and facial expressions, and this is based on need and necessity. And let me elaborate a little more on that, and then we're done with this presentation. Remember, in the previous video, we said that when you have a verb and two nouns, every language needs to be able to tackle this problem, that which of the nouns is the one doing the verb, and which of the nouns is the one upon whom the verb is being done. Some languages do it through extra words. Like in Urdu, if you want to say Zayd hit Amr, you would say Zayd ne Amr ko mara. So ne is a word, ko is a word. So the purpose of ne is to tell you which noun is the one doing the verb, and the purpose of ko is to tell you which noun is the one upon whom the verb is being done, and you'd have the verb at the end, mara. Mara means hit. Zayd ne Amr ko mara. You need 5 words to convey that meaning. In English, it's done by sequence. So the noun at the very front is automatically the subject, the verb would be in the middle, and the noun at the end would automatically be the object, and if you switch it around, the meaning changes. So you would say Zayd hit Amr, and if you say Amr hit Zayd, then it's not the same meaning anymore. In Arabic, the sequence is flexible. So the verb and the two nouns could be arranged in 6 different ways. And it would be the particular vowel at the end of the noun which will tell you which noun is the one doing the verb, and it will be the particular vowel at the end of the second noun that will tell you that that second noun is the one doing the is the object of the verb. And now it doesn't matter which one's first and which one's second. So we say ضرب زيد عمرا. ضرب زيد عمرا. And if I say ضرب زيدا عمرون, the meaning changes. And now Amr could be at the very front. Amran ضرب زيد. It was Amr that Zayd hit. And now you can arrange it in 6 different ways. More on this in the 4th presentation, and if you want more on it now, then you can go ahead and access the 45-page document, because I've elaborated on this in quite some depth. So that's pretty much what it means to govern and what it means to not govern. In the case of a harf, okay, I have 2 examples here. Ma nasara means did not help, and fil bayti means in the house. So ma is a harf and fi is a harf. If you look at ma nasara, take away the ma, it's nasara, he helped. Put the ma, did not help. So the ma, obviously, it indicated on a meaning. In nasara, the fact that the action did not happen, so negation is the meaning that's coming from ma. And fi indicates on containment. So something is happening in the house. In the house. So something is happening in the house, so there's containment that's indicated by fi. But the point to illustrate here is that ma is not changing the way the upcoming word is looking. Because nasara was nasara prior to the entry of ma, and it's still nasara after the ma has entered. Ma nasara, as opposed to fi, because if you take away the fi, then the last surah of al-bayt did not necessarily have to have a kasra. It could have been al-baytu if it was used in a structure that dictated that, and it could have been al-bayta if it was used in a structure that dictated that. So the ending on al-bayt is sort of flexible. It's like the human face that could be smiling or it could be frowning. That's the ending on bayt, but that's not true for nasara, right? So ma did not induce any change on the upcoming word, so therefore it's a non-governing agent, whereas fi did induce change, so it is a governing agent. So basically that's it. So now, in order to properly progress through all of this, you're going to have to get through 4 stages. So let me quickly go ahead and tell you the 4 stages of growth. So we have the startup phase, and this is it lasts for about 2.5 weeks, and within the startup phase, the aim and the goal is to teach the student how the language works. So basically they get an overall framework, and they get over half of all of their benefits right up front in the opening days of class. Okay, and then this then leads to the introduction of the book, the reading book. And once the reading book begins, then we're into initial growth, which is the 2nd phase. So here you're solidifying and reinforcing all the theory that was taught earlier. Not only that, but you're being taught new grammar based on need and necessity. So as the author of the book introduces newer structures, we're talking about them. And we're restricting ourselves to only those aspects that have the broadest application. So startup was focusing on the 4% of the language, and in initial growth, we're moving and broadening our scope to 20%. 20% of the language that gives you 80% of your benefits. And this lasts for about 5.5 months. So by the end of the 6th month, you're done with these 2 stages and you're moving into rapid growth. And rapid growth is the stage when you're studying a book unvoweled, without the vowels written in the book. Because what you need in a class is someone to force you to prepare the book, infer the vowels, because the vowels aren't there. So you're going to have to use all of the grammar that was taught to you earlier and infer and be able to read unvoweled text. Okay, and then you're into the continuous growth phase, and this is what Imam Nawawi, he's studying Sahih Muslim and Al-Muhazzab, and still he hasn't left his study of the Arabic language. because Arabic is the first thing that the scholars study, and they continue studying it for the rest of their lives. So what happens in continuous growth is now you have a level of independence, and you're able to access the books by the scholars in grammar and also in balagha, because the books in balagha are large. There's a 550-page text in balagha, the commentary by Imam at-Taftazani. Okay, but let me tell you the good news and the best news you'll ever get, and that is that in order to access books in tafsir, what you need is you need a very good, strong understanding in grammar, but you don't need to be a master in balagha, so you don't have to study that 550-page monstrosity. You don't. The reason is because the scholars in the books of tafsir, what they do is they assume you know Rafa, Nasab and Jar. They assume you know the mechanism of how the meanings are conveyed, and they assume you have some vocabulary, but they don't assume that you know the principles of balagha, cold. I mean, you have to have some exposure, but you don't have to know it cold, because before highlighting and illustrating the application within the verse, the scholar will generally restate the principle for you, because he's not assuming you're a master in it. You see, but he won't do that with grammar. And when you read the books of tafsir, this is when you get the appreciation, and you're able to see the rhetorical devices, and you'll get what the pre-Islamic Arab got, and then eventually you'll be able to do it even when you're reciting on your own. Okay? So that's pretty much it. Those are the 4 stages of growth. And inshallah, in the next 2 videos, the 3rd one and the 4th one, we're going to develop for you the past tense table. And it's a 30-minute presentation. I've already recorded it. And basically, by the end of that presentation, you will have memorized the entire table just by watching. Okay? And then we have 2 core issues that we'll speak about in the 4th video, which is the lack of is issue. There's no is in Arabic. And also the sequence not determining grammar issue, which I've highlighted somewhat already with the Zayd Hid Amr example. And then we'll tell you about the 15 of the 22 places, the 15 roles that an ism can play within a sentence. Because remember, the ism is very broad. Not only does it include noun, but it also includes nouns, it also includes pronouns, adjectives and adverbs. So how do you distinguish between them? Okay, and sequence is not determining for us. How do we do it? Okay, so we'll speak more about that, inshallah, in the 4th presentation. And with all of that said, I'd like to now direct you to the comments below this video. Go ahead and leave behind a comment. Tell me what you got from this video, and inshallah I'll see you again in a couple of days. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
So now that we're done with the 4 stages of growth video, and you've also read the report, and so now you can see how this approach is radically different than anything else you might have been exposed to. What it does is it gets straight to the guts of how the language works, and it takes these core concepts of the 3 parts of speech and the grammatical states, and it likens them to the English parts of speech that people are already familiar with, and it distributes them, and how it does it with the grammatical states, the house example, the house fell, I entered the house. So using these simple examples, what it does is it creates this mental imprint in the mind of the student about these core concepts, which then allows us to introduce more of the system without overwhelming the student. So if by watching this presentation, and if by reading the report, your desire for mastering the Arabic language has increased, then I would like to personally invite you to, inshallah, join this program that I will personally be conducting myself. So right now, registration is closed. Okay, because I want some demand to build, and I want to educate people so that they can see how this system will work for them. So then you can make your decision, yes or no, whether this is good for you. So, but what you can do is that around about this time, there's a button that probably appeared underneath this video. You can click that button and get on the early bird list. So by getting on the early bird list, this will allow you to join the program before anyone else, and it will pretty much guarantee your spot. So in a few days from now, when I open up registration to fill the remaining seats, you can ensure that you do get a spot. And if you're not at that level, then that's totally cool, because I got much more to share with you. Inshallah, the next video, the 15 of the 22 places video, is an hour long, and it covers a tremendous amount of content. This is the one video that one sister from the UK, she watched it, and she emailed my assistant. Okay, not as a review or a testimonial, but she was actually asking for advice. And she said, subhanallah, he covered more in 1 hour than I studied in an entire decade. So I look forward to sharing that video with you in a couple of days.
So welcome everyone to the 3rd presentation. And this is going to be a little different than the previous 2 presentations, and also the upcoming 4th one. Okay, the previous 2 were introducing the core concept, and they were elaborating on the big mistake, and it spoke about the 80-20 principle, and it spoke about the central theme, and human emotions and facial expressions, and a lot of how the language works, basically the overall framework of how the language works. Part of that framework is these major verbs. Like, you need to know the major verbs. You can't begin any reading until you're exposed to at least 2 of the 3. There's 3 in total, but 2 of them are extremely important, and the third one could be taught later after the book has begun. No problem with that. So if you remember in the previous presentation, in the 4 stages of growth one, we divided the verb into 3 major types. We had al-madi, al-fi'l al-madi, which is the perfect verb, the past tense verb, and istansuru was an example of a past tense verb. And then we had the present future one, which we call mudari', and then there's the command verb. Every verb in the Arabic language has 14 variations. There's going to be 14 conjugations. And let me speak a little about what a conjugation is and the emphasis on tables and why we need tables. Okay, once we're done with this conceptual, then we can get into the implementation, and I can start developing the table for you. And it's going to make a lot more sense once you know the reasoning behind it. So here's the reason why it's 14 and why we even have tables and why we even need them. Because in other languages, like in English, they don't have any concept of memorizing tables. It just doesn't exist. The reason is because regardless of the pronoun, regardless of who you're talking about, if you're talking about a male, or if you're talking about a female, or if you're talking to a male, or if you're talking to a female, or if it's a group of males or a group of females, makes no difference. In English, the verb remains the same. Okay, let me highlight that for you. So if it's sleeping, if you want to say one male slept, you say he slept. And if it's a female, you say she slept. If it's a group, you say they slept. You slept, I slept, we slept. Makes no difference. The slept is the slept. It stays the same throughout. Right? And the other reason is because there's not so many of them. Okay, like in English, there's only 6 pronouns, and that's because a lot of them are recycled more than once. So regardless of whether you're speaking to a male or speaking to a female, you say you. Regardless of whether it's one or a group, you say you, right? But in Arabic, we're going to have different ones, okay? So because in English, the verb does not get impacted by the change in the gender and the plurality and the person of the one doing the verb does not get impacted. It doesn't change. It stays the same. This is why there's no emphasis on tables in English. And the other reason is because the number is very small and there's only 6 of them. It's the opposite of these 2 reasons in Arabic that warrant a heavy emphasis on verb tables in Arabic. And we have a whole science that talks about that. It's called sarf, morphology. Okay, so let me elaborate on that some more. First of all, the pronoun, okay, the he, they, she, that pronoun in Arabic is written alongside the verb to the point that it looks like a single word. And we saw this in istansaru when we were dissecting that word and drawing out all the meanings, the 7 meanings that were coming from there. If you remember, the masculine gender, the plurality, and the person of the one doing the verb, all of that was coming from the waw at the end. And I was contrasting, and I was saying that if I wanted to speak about a group of females, I would do it differently. I never told you exactly how I would do it, but I said it would be different, which was the point over there, because we were highlighting comprehensiveness. But now, since we're developing the table, I'm going to give you the exact letter that would signify group of females, as opposed to the letter that is for the group of males. We already know that. It's the waw. The waw at the end of istansaru meant they group of males. So how do you say they group of females? So it's written together to the point that it looks like a single word. And the other reason is that there's more of them. In English, there's only 6, but in Arabic, there's a much larger number, and that number happens to be 14. And I'll even tell you exactly why it's 14, okay, and not 15 or 16. So it's a larger number. So when you have something that looks like it's being repeated 14 times, slightly different, then that warrants a table. You see, because the verb is impacted, and it does change, and it does look different. So and the difference is very slight. Right? So this is exactly the ingredients that you would expect there to be in a table. Okay? So this is the reason why we have tables and why we have a heavy emphasis on tables. So let's speak about the layout, and let's speak about the 14, and then we'll spend the rest of the presentation, inshallah, developing and filling the slots on all 14 of them. Okay, and I'm going to toggle the slides in a minute. Right now, I just want you to listen to me and try to internalize some of these conceptual things before I begin developing the table. Inshallah, that way, as soon as you hear the conjugations, you'll be able to retain them. And this is my aim and my objective through this 3rd presentation, is I want to give you results in advance. I want you, within these 30 minutes, to walk away from this presentation having memorized the entire table. I'll say that one more time. At the end of this 30-minute presentation, you will have memorized the entire table. Inshallah, we'll see whether I can fulfill on that promise by the end of the presentation. And I want you to comment underneath the video and tell me your percentage on how much of it you were able to retain just by watching the presentation. So let's go ahead and give you the layout, and then we'll start filling the slots. Okay, so there's three factors that result in our large number. Here are the three factors. First of all, you'll either be speaking about the doer of the verb, or you'll be speaking to the doer of the verb, or you yourself will be the doer of the verb. And that's what we call third person, second person, and first person. So that's one factor. And then each of those will split up gender-wise, masculine, feminine, masculine, feminine, masculine, feminine, so that we have 6. And then each of those will split up further based on whether the one doing the verb is one, two, or a group. And Arabic has a dual, which other languages doesn't have, and that's another reason why our number is large, because we have 4 theys essentially. A they, which means 2 males, another they, which is referring specifically to a group of males. We have a they reserved for 2 females, and we have another they, which is a group of females, and they're all different, and that's the whole point. They're all different, and that's why we need a table. Okay, so let's start seeing this now. Okay, so if you look at the slide right now, you'll see in the far left column it says third person. Third person. So we're gonna have, and then it results in 6 of them. The reason it's 6 is because first of all, there's males and there's females, and masculine could be singular, dual, plural, and feminine can also be singular, dual, plural. And then you can see the English equivalents: he, they, she, they. Lift your head off the screen and say that. He, they, she, they. Pause the video if you need to try to internalize this. Okay? So you're speaking about 1 male, you're speaking about 2 males, you're speaking about a group of males, you're speaking about 1 female, you're speaking about 2 females, or you're speaking about a group of females. Obviously, the Arabic verb will be given to you, inshallah, by the end of this presentation. Right now, we're just explaining the table layout. Okay, so now we see the same 6 repeated again, but this time you're not speaking about them, but you're speaking to them. So either you'll be speaking to 1 male, or you're speaking to 2 males, or you're speaking to a group of males. 1 female, 2 females, group of females, 6 yous. You. So from the top, it's he, they, she, they, and then 6 yous. Okay, and then for the first person, when the speaker is the doer, over there we would expect there to be 6 also. So the number should be 18, because 6 plus 6 plus 6 is 18. But in Arabic, there's a little overlap that happens in the first person. So regardless of whether you're a male or a female, if you're doing a verb and you want to speak about yourself doing the verb, you would say I. You would say I slept, I hit, I helped, and the same conjugation would, the same word, the same actual Arabic word would be used for singular male and female. It doesn't matter. And also dual becomes irrelevant. So instead of 18, we only have 14. I and we. So he, they, she, they, 6 yous, and then I and we. And that's pretty much it. This is our table layout, and this is what we will be recycling again and again. So spend the 5 minutes or the 10 minutes to properly understand the table layout. First of all, why we need the table? Okay, because our number is large, and our number is large because we have duals, and we have very little overlap. Okay, as opposed to English, because English doesn't have a dual, and English has a lot of overlap. And the second reason why we need tables is because the verb and the pronoun are written together to the point that it looks like a single word. So what you're seeing essentially is you're seeing the same word repeated so many times, slightly different, and this is exactly why we need a table. Okay, so this part of the presentation is over, and now we can develop the Madi verb. Now, when you sign up for the premium program, inshallah, and we continue with the science, and we start developing the Mudari, and also the command verb and the variations of the Mudari, the table layout will be the same. That doesn't change. What fills the slots changes. So right now, the words that we'll be using to fill these 14 slots are Madi specific. They're to do with the past tense verb, and the ones for the Mudari would be different. In other words, the Mudari has its own method of construction, which fundamentally differs from the method I'm introducing to you today. Okay? So now every verb will either be active or passive. And we'll return back to this towards the end of the presentation, but let me just tell you right now that every verb will be active or passive. Now, very briefly, active means that the verb is attributed to the doer. In other words, that letter at the end of the verb is signifying the gender, the plurality, and the person of the doer. So we're speaking about the doer of the verb is a male or a female. The doer of the verb is either two or a group or one, and we are speaking about the doer of the verb, or we are speaking to the doer of the verb, or we ourselves are the doer of the verb. All the emphasis on the doer, and that's what active means. Passive is when the doer is suppressed. We're not speaking about the doer, but instead we're concerned about the object. So now that letter at the end of the verb is not signifying the gender or the plurality or the person of the doer anymore, but it's they were helped, she was helped, you were helped, I was helped, we were helped. So now all of the emphasis is on the object, and the subject isn't even there. And that's called passive. Okay? So more on that later. First of all, everything I speak about in the next 10 minutes will be active specific. Once I'm done with the active, if I spend 10, 15 minutes on the active, I'll spend 1 minute on the passive. Okay? So that's called leveraging, because everything's the same. There's only slight difference. So this sarf is not about memorization. Sarf is about noting slight differences. There is a degree of memorization by necessity. Okay, like what we're doing right now, but it's very minimal. Okay, it's not about rote memorization, it's more to do with understanding. Okay, so the model pattern for the past tense verb in three-lettered verbs without extras is fa'ala. I'll say that one more time. The model pattern for past tense verbs in three-lettered verbs, the model pattern for the past tense in three-lettered verbs, active voice is fa'ala. Okay? So what that means is that you would get your 3 letters from the dictionary, whatever they may be. 3 letters, because we spoke about this in the first presentation, that meanings in Arabic are achieved by gathering the letters of the alphabet into groups of 3. You'd get tens of thousands of groups if you did it. Every group of 3 has an associated meaning, but because they're consonants, and consonants on their own are not pronounceable, we're going to need vowels. We're going to need vowels, and I spoke about this in the first presentation. So depending on what configuration of vowels you add to the letters, you're going to get more meaning. So there's one meaning that comes from the letters, and there's additional meaning that comes from the pattern, from the vowels. So if you want to convey active voice in the past tense in 3-lettered verbs, then this is how you do it. You add a fatha on the first and second and third. All 3 letters would have a fatha, and you get fa'ala. An example will be nasara, and another example will be jalasa. Nasara means he helped, and jalasa means he sat. And notice that apart from the third base letters, there's no ending. There's no particular ending here. The he is implied. It's understood. The reason is because the rest of them will have endings. There's 14 in total, and 13 of them will have designated letters to represent the pronoun. So if you see none of those letters are there, then by default the verb means he. Right? So now we have our first one, fa'ala. Fa'ala. If you want to indicate 2, then what you do is that you add an alif. You add an alif to the end of fa'ala, and now it becomes they 2 males helped, or they 2 males sat, or whatever the meaning is, ate, drank, whatever the meaning is, depending on the letters you're using. So fa'ala fa'ala. So now, be able to say that. Lift your head off the screen and say fa'ala fa'ala. Fa'ala fa'ala. Just stretch it a little and it becomes 2. 2 males. Okay, now, if you're speaking about a group of males, you're going to add a waw to the end of the verb, and this is our next one. You'll add a waw to the end of the verb, and that waw would be sakin, and the third letter of the verb, the lam, would receive a dhamma, and that dhamma would be stretched. So you say fa'alu, and if you remember, this is exactly the one that was used in the istansaru example, because ru, lu, you see that? But istansaru is larger, you see? But then, at the beginning of the presentation, at the beginning of developing this, I told you 3-lettered verb without extras. So the implication is that 3-lettered verbs can have extras. And if it has extras, it will be different. And those would be topics that would be introduced gradually. It's not part of the 4% that you need to know right now. Okay, so when speaking about a group of males, the way to do it would be after the lam position. After lam position means the third letter. So we have fa position, ain position, lam position. After the lam position of the verb, you would add a waw, and the lam itself would receive a dhamma. Okay, the third base letter will receive a dhamma, and it will become fa'ala, fa'ala, fa'alu. And there's an alif at the end of the structure, and that alif is not pronounced, it's silent. And there's a particular wisdom behind why that alif is there, which if you think you know it, then go ahead and post in the comments and we'll see. Okay, I don't want to spend too much time on it, so we're going to continue forward. So we have 3 of them now, so you can lift your head off the screen and say fa'ala, fa'ala, fa'alu. Fa'ala, fa'ala, fa'alu. He, they. Fa'ala, fa'ala, fa'alu. Now the point here is to give you the model.
Okay, now obviously you would change the letters to create meanings. So you would say nasara, nasara, nasaru. He helped, they helped, they helped. Jalasa, jalasa, jalasu. He sat, they sat, they sat. And the they is referring to two males. The second they is referring to a group of males. So now we have our third person masculine conjugations. All three of them are done. When we move into the females, when speaking about one female, the way to do that would be to add a ta at the end of the verb, and the ta has a sukoon, so it's fa'alat. Fa'alat. Nasarat, jalasat. She helped, she sat. Okay? Simply add a ta at the end, and you have your fourth conjugation. Now we have fa'ala, fa'ala, fa'alu, fa'alat. The next one is by adding a ta and an alif. Now we're speaking about two females. Two females. So fa'alata, and when you combine that with the previous ones, you add a ta, and when you combine that with the previous ones, now we have 5. Now this is the point to pause the presentation and spend 2 minutes or 3 minutes. Inshallah, by the end of this presentation, you're going to know all 14. Okay, provided that you stay with me here. So we have fa'ala, fa'ala, fa'alu, fa'alat, fa'alata. Try to say that about 5 times. Okay, and then once you've said it 5 times and you're comfortable with it, then we can continue with the remaining conjugations. Fa'ala, fa'ala, fa'alu, fa'alat, fa'alata. Fa'alat is speaking about one female. Fa'alata is speaking about two females. Okay, nasarata, they, two females helped. Jalasata, they, two females sat. Okay, now when we hit the 6th conjugation, something unique happens that hasn't happened up until now. Okay, what's happened is that the lam position of the verb, the third base letter of the verb, receives a sukoon. So it's fa'al, fa'al, and then the suffix, or you can say the pronoun, the designated letter is added after the sukoon, so we get fa'alna, and this sukoon will maintain until the end of the table. So we have our top 5 already. Fa'ala, fa'ala, fa'alu, fa'alat, fa'alata, and then it becomes fa'al something. Fa'al, 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 all the way down into the bottom. And then after the fa'al, you'd add 1 letter, 2 letters, 1 letter, 2 letters, and create the rest of the pronouns by adding that letter after the sukoon. So just remember that. It will aid the memorization. So the lam position of the verb receives a sukoon. And you add a noon. Okay? And it remains that way until the end of the table. And now we have 6. Fa'ala, fa'ala, fa'alu, fa'alat, fa'alata, fa'alna, fa'alna. Fa'alna. Okay, now, we're going to do something magical at this stage right now. The next 6, okay, I'm going to deviate from the way I'm doing it for a bit, inshallah, and then we'll get back to what we're doing. The next 6, okay, you already know about the fa'al part, that the lam position has a sukoon. Now, after the fa'al, you're going to add a ta for one male. When you're speaking to one male, you say fa'alta, nasarta, you helped. Jalasta, you sat, ta. 2 males, tuma, and then tum. Ti tumatunna. Now take that. Ta tumatum, ti tumatunna. Ta tumatum. Say that 20 times. Ta tumatum, ti tumatunna. Ta tumatum. Tum is when you're speaking to a group of males. And if you speak Urdu, then that might help you because tum sab mard. Tum sab mard, like all of you. Tum, ti tumatunna. That's just a coincidence. Ti is when you're speaking to one female. Tuma, speaking to 2 females. And then tunna. Ta tumatum, ti tumatunna. Can you say that? Ta tumatum, ti tumatunna. Now add the fa'al, we get fa'alta, fa'altuma, fa'altum, fa'alti, fa'altuma, fa'altunna. Now we're at 12. So we're going to see these 6 now develop one by one. So for conjugation number 7, speaking to one male, you add the ta at the end of it, and that's pretty much it. So now we have from the top, fa'ala, fa'ala, fa'alu, fa'alat, fa'alata, fa'alna, fa'alta, fa'altuma, fa'altum. The next one is eighth one now, tuma, when you're speaking to 2 males, fa'altuma, and then you can add that to the list now. And fa'altum is when you're speaking to a group of males. You, 3+ males, helped. Fa'alta, fa'altuma, fa'altum, and then the next 3 would be fa'alti, speaking to 1 female. And then speaking to 2 females is tuma. And notice this one's recycled because the 2 males one and the 2 females one, no difference. Now, somebody might ask, how do you tell the difference if it's the same one? The answer is that question is purely hypothetical. It doesn't really exist in real life because even in English, you don't make a distinction. Whether you're speaking to a male, you're speaking to a female, group of males, you say you. So there's overlap, and it's not a big deal. Okay, and basically the context would distinguish because you'll have physical people in front of you. So either you have physically two males in front of you, or you have two females in front of you. You're gonna say fa'altuma to them. Okay, and then the 12th one is fa'altunna. Fa'altunna, and remember that ta tumatum, ti tumatunna, that I already had you memorized before I introduced these 6. So now add them to the previous 6. We have 12 now, and we're almost done. Okay. So at this stage, you might want to lift your head off the screen and say all 12 of them from memory. فَعَلَ فَعَلَا فَعَلُوا فَعَلَتْ فَعَلَتَا فَعَلْنَا فَعَلْتَا فَعَلْتُمَا فَعَلْتُمْ فَعَلْتِي فَعَلْتُمَا فَعَلْتُنَّ. And then finally we have the I and the we. So for the I is 2, and this is a little interesting because the ta was used quite a few times. If you look in the 4th one, we had فَعَلَت, and that was speaking about one female, she. And then we had the ta with all 3 vowels. We had the ta with the fatha, the ta with the kasra, and now the ta with the dhamma. And just try to recall that and remember that. That when you're speaking to a male, you say fa'alta. When you're speaking to a female, you say fa'alti. And when you're speaking about yourself, regardless of gender, you say fa'altu. And then now we're on our 14th one. 14th one is fa'alna, with a noon and an alif, and not just na. And na was the 6th one, if you remember, fa'alna, and this one's fa'alna, and there's a clear difference between those two. Okay, so here's the entire table here, and pretty much that's it. So on a single slide, you see all 14 of them gathered together, and at this stage, you might want to pause the video, just internalize that, look at that screen, and spend some time with it, and lift your head off the screen and say fa'ala, fa'ala, fa'alu, fa'alat, fa'alata, fa'alna, فعلت فعلتما فعلتم فعلتي فعلتما فعلتن فعلت فعلنا. And I would suggest focusing time on the middle 6 first, the conjugations 7 through 12, and nailing those down first. Okay, like, make sure you're at 100% with those middle 6, the ta, tuma, tum, ti, tuma, tunna ones. Once you have those, then go back and remove the gaps in understanding and try to get those top 6, combine it with the 6 you already have, and you're like 90% of the way there, if you could do those 12. And then just wrap it up with fa'altu and fa'alna. All of what we talked about was active. In other words, when speaking about the doer. So that alif, that waw, that ta, tuma, tum, ti, tuma, all of those letters are pronouns, are literally pronouns speaking about the gender, the plurality, and the person of the one doing the verb. Right? So if you want to turn this into passive, and if you want to say he was helped, they were helped, she was helped, they were helped, you were helped, 6 of those, I was helped, we were helped, then you make some modification to the 1st and 2nd letter, and this same table will become a passive table. So passive voice in Arabic is called majhul, and it's also called mabni lil maf'ul, but the Arabic term isn't really important, so don't worry about the Arabic term. Basically, it's done by 2 modifications. A second to last base letter, it will receive a kasra. So the a part becomes i, and then the very first letter would receive a dhamma, and fa'ala, fa'ala, fa'alu becomes fu'ila, fu'ila, fu'ilu. You see that? Fu'ila, fu'ila, fu'ilu. And now you can lift your head off the screen and say fu'ila, fu'ila, fu'ilu, or what we have here is nusira, nusira, nusiru, nusirat, nusirata, nusirna, nusirta, nusirtuma, nusirtum, nusirti, nusirtuma, nusirtunna, nusirtu, nusirna. And the translations will be, he was helped, they were helped, she was helped, they were helped, you were helped 6 times, I was helped, we were helped. So now that letter at the front is not signifying the doer anymore. It's not speaking about the gender, the plurality, and the person of the one doing the verb, but instead that letter at the end, the 13 letters, okay, those letters are now representing the object, and the doer is not even there. The doer is suppressed. So like in Nusiru, if the question is posed, who helped? The answer is we don't know. All we know is that the people that were helped were males. The people that received the help were males, but we have no idea of who the helper was. It could have been one female that helped the males, and Nusiru would be true. It could have been I, the person, and I'm just being humble, and I don't want to indicate that I'm the one that did it, so I say Nusiru, and really, what I'm trying to say is I helped them, but I don't say it that way, I say they were helped. Parentheses by me. Right? You get it? Okay, so now we have 2 tables. We have the fa'ala, fa'ala, fa'alu table, and we have the fu'ila, fu'ila, fu'ilu table. And the fa, ain, and lam letters are basically their models. That the Sarf people, it's like in algebra, they have x, y, and z, and they use that to
to illustrate the formula. And then, but in actual usage, it's not X, Y, Z you'd be replacing with numbers. So similarly here, fa, ain, and lam is like a paper cutting of a tailor. A tailor has a paper cutting that he uses to facilitate his tailoring. But nobody wears the paper. So I don't want you to be translating fa'ala, fa'ala, fa'alu, because it's like wearing the paper. Nobody wears the paper. The paper is used to create the garment, and then the garment is worn. So similarly, fa'ala, fa'ala, fa'alu, you don't have to translate it. He did, they did, she did. But just understand the association. Understand what those letters are signifying. And if you really, really want to translate, then substitute with nasara and go ahead and translate that to your heart's content. So he helped, they helped, they helped. She helped, they helped, they helped. You helped 6 times. I helped, we helped. And for passive, it would be he was helped. And you can see that on the screen right now. Okay, both of these, the fa'ala one and the fu'ila one, if you want to create negatives out of them, you put a ma at the front, and ma fa'ala, he did not help, eat, drink, whatever the action is, and ma fu'ila, he was not helped, hit, honored, or whatever the action is. So ma fa'ala, ma fu'ila. So now we have 4 tables: fa'ala, fu'ila, ma fa'ala, ma fu'ila. And to end this presentation, I'm going to go ahead and recite all 4 tables in that order. 14, 14, 14. And they're not on the slide. I want you to listen to me do it, inshallah, and just try to follow. Okay? And then watch the presentation a couple of times, and inshallah you'll be able to replicate what I just did right now, what I'm about to do right now. So here goes. فَعَلَ فَعَلَا فَعَلُوا فَعَلَتْ فَعَلَتَا فَعَلْنَا فَعَلْتَ فَعَلْتُمَا فَعَلْتُمْ فَعَلْتِ فَعَلْتُمَا فَعَلْتُنَّ فَعَلْتُ فَعَلْنَا. Table number 2. فُعِلَ فُعِلَا فُعِلُوا فُعِلَتْ فُعِلَتَا فُعِلْنَا فُعِلْتَ فُعِلْتُمَا فُعِلْتُمْ فُعِلْتِ فُعِلْتُمَا فُعِلْتُنَّ فُعِلْتُ فُعِلْنَا. Table number 3. ما فعل ما فعلا ما فعلوا ما فعلت ما فعلتا ما فعلنا ما فعلت ما فعلتما ما فعلتم ما فعلت ما فعلتما ما فعلتن ما فعلت ما فعلنا. 4th table. ما فعل ما فعلا ما فعلوا ما فعلت ما فعلتا ما فعلنا ما فعلت ما فعلتما ما فعلتم ما فعلت ما فعلتما ما فعلتن ما فعلت ما فعلنا. And that concludes the 4 tables. Okay. So to really solidify this, you know, like half an hour or 20 minutes is well worth the effort to be able to do this. Okay, because this is not isolated. This clearly belongs to the 4% of the language that has the broadest application. Because these verbs will begin occurring. As soon as the reading text begins and you start seeing the verbs in the book, they're going to have different endings. And you're going to need to know what those endings mean. Sometimes the verbs will be active. Sometimes they'll be passive. Sometimes they'll have a ma in front of them. Sometimes they won't have a ma in front of them. So all of this is really important, right? And what we just did right now would also be done with the second major verb, the present and future one. But then you'll have different words. The table layout will be the same, but the slots will be filled with different verbs, and the method of construction will be different. Okay, so the way we do it is that conceptually we explain and develop the table as I just did it for you. That's one step. The second step is to begin seeing the verbs in the context of a storybook. Okay, the more you see it, the more intimately familiar you'll get with them. And the third is to practice verb recitation, and we do that in our live sessions, in our premium program.
Okay, so now that we're done with the Mahdi presentation and we've developed all 14 conjugations and we've explained the differences between active and passive and also how to create negatives, I'd like you to post underneath this video and give us some idea of how much you were able to retain from the tables just by watching the video alone. Give us a percentage, maybe 50%, maybe 60, 70. Like if you can lift your head off the screen and recite the table from memory, I'd just like to know if I was successful in creating these results for you. And if after watching this presentation and also reading the report and the previous presentations, if you can see how this method will work for you, and if you'd really like to understand more of the messages that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has intended for you, then I'd like to personally invite you to join this program that we will be opening registration for in a couple of days. Okay, so since this method is geared toward teaching Arabic as it relates to our spiritual studies, it's completely different than any other Learn Arabic program you might have heard of in the past. And in fact, it is the only program in existence that precisely leverages the 80-20 principle, as I explained to you in the report. So currently we have over 1,000 people joining the newsletter list every day, brand new people, and they're watching these videos. There's a massive amount of interest, and the seats are extremely limited. So if you'd like to join the program before everyone else and pretty much guarantee for yourself a spot, then you can click the button below this video and enter your email address on the next page. We already have your email address, so nothing strange. It's just to re-indicate your interest, and this way you'll be able to join before everyone else. And if you're not ready to invest in the program right now, then that's totally okay, because I have one final presentation to come after this one, which is about an hour long, and it includes a tremendous amount of teaching. One sister from the UK, she emailed my assistant and she said, subhanallah, he covered more in 1 hour than I studied in an entire decade. Everything I studied in an entire decade, he covered in a single hour. So that presentation is waiting for you, inshallah. It will be unlocked for you by as early as tomorrow.
So now we're proceeding with the final training. And if you're just joining us in the last couple of days, I'd like to welcome you. And then I'd also like to strongly encourage you to read the report and watch the previous pieces before moving forward with today's presentation. And this is going to be a lengthy one. And to say that we have a lot of ground to cover is an understatement. Okay, we have a mammoth task on our hands today. Okay, this is material that would normally spread over 8 hours, and I'm attempting to teach it in a single 60-minute presentation. Okay, I think what's made this manageable and somewhat possible is the report that preceded, and also the earlier two pieces. It did a lot of the heavy lifting. So today we can move forward with the sentence and develop the possible usages for the ism, the total amount of ways that the ism could be used in the sentence. So let's proceed. Okay, so in the previous video we spoke about the 4 stages of growth, and that our aim and our goal in these 10 days that we have together is to get you out of the startup stage and get you into initial growth. So what that means is that we want to give you the 4% of the language that will give you over half of all of your benefits, and this is by understanding the mistake that in order to master classical Arabic and to learn classical Arabic so that you can understand the Quran and appreciate its miracle, you can't begin with the simple. You have to acknowledge that the Arabic language is an intricate system for the conveyance of meaning, and it has a word level and it has a sentence level. The majority of meanings in Arabic do not come from the words, but instead they come from the vowels and the patterns and the grammatical structures, and this was highlighted with the istansaru example in the previous video. Okay, we did it in the report, and then I redid it again in the previous video, just to show you that it doesn't have to be in the exact same way that was given in the report. You don't have to parrot my words, but what you need is a mini presentation. You need a 5-minute presentation where you can do that. You can take the structure, istansaru, and you can break it down, and you can explain the translation as they sought help, and the actual total number of meanings from there are 7. Okay, so what looks like a single word is giving you 7 meanings. Only one of those 7 meanings is coming from the dictionary, the rest are not coming from the dictionary. So this seamlessly leads into the introduction of sarf. It introduces the science of sarf, and you have the components in order to define it and to give a proper understanding of what that science is. And we do the same for grammar, and we did it in the previous video. We mapped the language, we talked about the most basic sound that comes out of the human mouth and how it divides into the meaningful and the meaningless, and then ultimately that led to words, sentences, and phrases. And then from there we spoke a bit about subclassifying. We subclassified the word and the phrase, and we got to the sentence, and we're going to proceed now from there. And we spoke about grammatical states. In the previous presentation we spoke about grammatical states, and we introduced them. We peeled the first layer, and we gave you their names, which were Rafa, Nasab, and Jar, and we likened them to human emotions and facial expressions. Okay, Arabic words were likened to human emotions and facial expressions, and we didn't stop there, but then we introduced the second analogy, which was the English pronouns he, him, and his. So we lined up the Rafa with the he, the Nasab with the him, and the Jar with the his. So if you understand in English the difference between he, him, and his, you have a 60-70% understanding of what Rafa, Nasab, and Jar are automatically, immediately. Okay, so that's what we did in the previous video. So we're going to move forward now, and we're going to redevelop that, the grammatical states, the Rafa, the Nasab, and Jar, and tell you exactly what Rafa is. Because up until now you're thinking that Rafa means subject, and up until now you're thinking that Nasab means object, and you're thinking that Jar means possessive. So that was not entirely accurate. Okay, but we did that on purpose in order to create the mental imprint, because our intention is to come back to the discussion, as we're going to do now. Okay, so I got that out of the way. Okay, so now I'm going to slow down a little.
Okay, the reason I was speaking a little more quicker, because this presentation is going to get lengthy, and that's not something I can help. Okay, so let me just remind you again that all of these videos are downloadable, and they all have transcripts. The previous transcript, my assistant, Sister Rahima, sat until 4:25 a.m. creating that transcript in order to get it to your hands. So we're going to do the same with this video. We're going to create a transcript for it. So with the help of that transcript, inshallah, if you watch it a couple of times, then you will get it. You will understand the overall big picture, and you'll get the core concept. Okay, so let's press forward with this. Okay, so we're speaking about the sentence. But first of all, let's remind you of the purpose of grammar. So grammar is this process of how the words experience grammatical states and how the states are reflected on the last letter. That's what it is really, what we introduce, grammatical states. Now, knowing this is important. It's not only important in order to protect you from verbal error in the sense that you speak correctly and what you say is valid, which is important, right? Because it will be awkward if you're making mistakes. But not only that, but it's actually integral to communicating. Without it, communication ceases to exist. You will not be able to do something as fundamental as distinguishing between which of the nouns is the one doing the verb and which of the nouns is the one upon whom the verb is being done. Your listener will be totally confused if you get the grammar wrong. Okay? So it's to protect yourself and your audience from confusion. Ibn Khaldun, he lists the 4 sciences that make up classical Arabic, the 4 areas, and the first one is mufradat, which is vocabulary, and this is an area that needs to be studied. And I sort of bypass it, or I sort of downplay it in the report and also in the previous video. But I'm not trying to say that it's not important. It is important, but it's something that will build gradually. And the best way to build vocabulary is not through flashcards or through vocabulary lists, but through an actual reading text. So since our aim is to begin the reading text so early on, so that's why we can focus right now on the non-word meanings. Okay? So this is why the emphasis right now is not on vocabulary. The emphasis right now is on the second area, which is grammar. And when he says grammar, he means inclusive of sarf, because classically this is what the scholars did. They would write a single manual that gave you the principles of grammar and also had a section on the principles of sarf. Okay, so that's the second. And the third one's rhetoric. And rhetoric is when you have all this flexibility, the question is what do you do with it? Okay, so if you have a verb and 2 nouns that can be formatted in 6 different ways, so which one to use at what time? So one of them is the standard format, and the other 5 are the unconventional arrangements of the words. So when to resort to those unconventional methods, this is taught to you in rhetoric. And from these 4 areas, the fourth one is literature, and literature means studying the works of the scholars and reading the the elevated prose of the scholars and the fiction writers also, the poets. So to read their works and see how they use metaphor and how they use metonymy and how they structure their sentences and how they communicate their meanings. So theory alone will not help you, but along with the theory you have to have a considerable amount of reading, so it needs to become 50-50, which incidentally is what we do in our program, that when we're teaching grammar and morphology, we're spending half of our time on reading. Okay, so from these 4 areas, the most noble and the most exalted is the rhetoric area. And Al-Qazwini, who is the author of Talkhis al-Miftah, which is the standard book in Balagha, the Matan, the manual in Balagha, which At-Taftazani wrote the commentary on in 550 pages, he says that Ajallul ulumi qadran, the science of Balagha, the sciences of Balagha, it has 3 sub-sciences. So this rhetoric is the most exalted of the sciences associated to the Arabic language. And the reason he says that is because through Balagha, إذ به يكشف عن وجوه الإعجاز في نظم القرآن أستارها. Because through Balagha, in the veils are removed. Through Balagha, the veils are removed from the faces of miraculousness within the words of the Quran. I'll say that one more time. Through the sciences of Balagha, the veils are removed from the faces of miraculousness in the words of the Quran. Okay, so when you know this, then you can see the miracle in front of you. And I spoke about this in the first piece also, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself says, أَفَمَنْ كَانَ عَلَى بَيِّنَةٍ مِّن رَبِّهِ. Can the rejecter of the Quran be equal to the one who is upon evidence from his Lord, and to it is attached its own internal witness? So it's the special use of the language within the Quran that makes it miraculousness. So when you know this, this strengthens your faith. And this strengthens your conviction and your belief in the in the Quran being the words of Allah. So the Quran actually begins speaking to you. So this is the most noble of the sciences. Okay, but it's not the most important. Okay, I'll say that one more time. It's not the most important. The most important is grammar, because without grammar, communication ceases to exist. There's a degree of grammar that needs to be provided up front. Without it, you can't begin any reading, and you can't understand even a children's book. You wouldn't be able to understand a children's book, let alone the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ibn Khaldun, he says, أَهَمُّهَا النَّحْوُ, the most important of them is grammar. إِذْ لَوْلَاهُ, because without grammar, لَجُهِلَ أَصْلُ التَّفَاهُمْ, communication ceases to exist. The very core of tafahum means communication, the very core of communication will become unknown. Okay, so this is what we're doing in this presentation, this is what we did in the previous presentation, and this is what we introduced to you in the report. These are the most important things in the language, period. Okay, so this is what we mean by leading with the complex. Let's press forward. Okay, now every sentence has two parts, and this is true in every language. English sentences have these two parts, Urdu sentences have these two parts, and they are the subject and the predicate. The primary portion of the sentence would be the subject, and this must be either a noun or an entity. It's the thing you talk about. Predicate is what you say about the primary portion, and this could be either in the form of another noun, so you have two nouns completing the entire sentence, like Zayd is a human, or it could be an adjective, Zayd is tall, or it could be a compound structure, like Zayd is in the house. So in the house, together all of those words are speaking about the subject at the front of the sentence. So this is true for every language. Every sentence must have these two parts. The first is called subject, the other one is called predicate. In English, the discussion stops here. There's no further development of the subject and the predicate. Okay, because all sentences in English begin with the noun. All sentences in English begin with the noun. Regardless of what kind of predicate you have, the noun will be at the front. In the nominal sentence, like the three examples I just gave you, Zayd is a human, Zayd is tall, Zayd is in the house. Okay, that's fine. Zayd went, Zayd hit Amr. You see, now I'm using verbs, but still Zayd's at the front. So basically subject and predicate, that's all we have. And there's no major issues to tackle over there, because the sequence is determined in the grammar. And if there's no verb, then there's a is. Okay, in Arabic, there's no sequence, there's no is. So do you understand? This is the topic of today's presentation. We're going to speak about the lack of sequence determining grammar. The lack of sequence determining grammar and the lack of the is issue. So these are two major problems that need to be addressed. Okay, so the grammar people notice this. They know that these are the two issues. So I'm going to give you the solution for the lack of is issue, and I'm going to give you the solution for the sequence not determining grammar issue. Okay, so there's these two parts. Every sentence has them, subject and predicate. In Arabic, the grammarians, because of the two issues that will develop throughout this presentation, they've chose to classify the sentence into two parts, into two categories. The first is the verbal sentence, and the second is the nominal sentence. Okay, the reason why this classification is important is because in Arabic the verb is at the front, which is a fundamental difference than how it is in English. Okay, so if you choose to speak a verb, first of all, you have a choice. You don't have to bring a verb. You can create a sentence without a verb, like those three examples I gave you a minute ago. Zayd is a human, Zayd is tall, and Zayd is in the house. So in those three examples, I used the word is, which technically is a verb, but in Arabic, if I was to speak that, there would be no is. Okay, so basically those are verbless sentences. Okay, then I can choose to use a verb. So the minute you choose to use a verb, then the thing is that the verb has to be at the very front. Every verb must have a subject, and the subject must follow it. This is set in stone. This is the principle, and this is what dictates the classification we have on the screen right now. Had it not been for this principle, we would not have needed this classification. We could have used the generic terms subject and predicate everywhere as they do in English. This is going to make a lot more sense, inshallah, as we move forward with the presentation. So here's the principle. The doer of the verb must follow the verb. Okay, so if I want to say Zayd went, I'm going to bring Zahaba first, and I'm going to bring Zayd second, and Zahaba Zaydun is the standard format. Okay, this is how you would say Zayd went. In a nominal sentence, they don't have verbs. Okay, so you can have a sentence that doesn't have a verb at all. Okay, like Al-Kitabu Jadidun, the book is new. Okay, and a third kind of sentence in Arabic would be that it begins with an ism. So we have an ism at the front. Okay, and then there's a verb following. There's a verb following. So what I just told you 2 slides ago, in order to reconcile with that, because that principle has no exceptions, the fact that the subject of a verb needs to follow it, we're going to have to understand this differently. And this is an extremely advanced topic, but I'm confident inshallah you'll be able to get it. Look at the example. Okay, Zaydun dhahaba. If I say Zaydun dhahaba, the translation is not Zayd went, because that was the previous one. That was dhahaba Zaydun. If I say Zaydun dhahaba, actually what I'm saying is Zayd, comma, he went. So the total number of words there are 3. There's the Zayd at the front, and then there's the dhahaba verb. Dhahaba needs a subject, because we said on the previous slide, every verb must have a subject following it. So dhahaba needs a subject. There's no noun following it, so what do we do? This is what we do. We pull out a huwa, and we would say that this verb is containing an implicit he. And verbs have that potential. Verbs have the potential to carry pronouns. Okay, a lot of the times there's something stuck to it, like a wow, like in the istansaru example. So in that case, the wow itself would be the subject. But if there's nothing stuck to it, then by default, the verb has the capacity to contain a huwa. So the total number of words are 3. 2 of them are physically present, and the third one is assumed and inferred. And inference is something that we employ in our everyday lives. Majority of the knowledge we get it through inference. We don't get it through observing directly. And this is like the man that walks into the house through the door, and there's 2 rooms, and we don't find him in one room. What does that mean? That means he must be in the other, right? By rational necessity. So sometimes knowledge of the person being in a particular room is gained through observing him directly, and other times it's gained by finding one room empty of him, so we know he's in the other. So there's like a difference between inferred knowledge and observed knowledge. And if a person's writing in front of us, producing beautiful calligraphy, so what we observe is the movement of the fingers and the formation of the letters on the paper. Okay, so that's what we're seeing. But along with that, we have further knowledge. And that is, number 1, the person is alive. And number 2, he's not paralyzed. And number 3, he's skilled in the art of writing. And number 4, he's actually willing to write. So the life and the will and the knowledge and the power, the capability, all of that is inferred. So because meanings presuppose meanings. Okay, enough of that. That was a bit about logic, but that's okay. So what we're seeing here on the screen is initially 2 words, but through the principle that we gave 2 slides ago, we know that the actual number of words are 3. Okay, and that third one is understood with the arrow and the huwa. Okay, so hopefully that's fine. Now, here are the 2 issues. The sequence not determining grammar issue. So in verbal sentences, this is the problem, because if you have a verb and you have the 2 isms lined up alongside it, then you need to have some mechanism to figure out which of the nouns is the one doing the verb and which of the nouns is the one upon whom the verb is being done. So every language needs to address this. So Urdu does it with extra words. So along with the verb and the 2 nouns, you'll have a ne and you'll have a ko. So when you combine it together, you get Zayd ne amr ko mara. So Zayd hit amr. So now the ne is distinguishing which noun is the subject, and the ko is distinguishing which noun is the object. And if you switch it around, and switch around the ne and the ko, then Zayd becomes the object and Amr becomes the subject. Zayd ko Amr ne. Now Zayd is the object and Amr is the subject. So what is ne, what is ko? These are extra words. So Urdu does it through extra words. English does it through the order. So the noun that's at the very front needs to be the subject, and then we have the verb in the middle and the object at the end. So every language has this method. The method that the Arab people have developed in order to distinguish between their grammatical meanings is the most superior method, because number 1, it does not rely on extra words, and number 2, sequence remains flexible. And you're going to see this on the next slide. If you look on the next slide, we've taken the Zayd and the Amr and the verb daraba, and we've arranged them in 6 different ways. And these are the 6 total possible ways that the 3 words can be arranged, and they all mean the same. They all convey the same basic meaning of Zayd hit Amr. So in all 6 examples, the subject is Zayd, and in all 6 examples, the object is Amr. So from these 6, obviously one of them is standard, and that would be the one that's circled green, Zayd hit Amr. So everything else being equal, this is the one you choose. You wouldn't deviate from this one for no reason. Okay, now what are the other 5? So those other 5 are unconventional. So it depends on the knowledge that the audience already has. So if the audience is already aware of the action having occurred, and they already know who did the action, and the only new piece of information you're giving them is the fact that Amr was the one that's hit, then you would use the one in the bottom, the yellow one, the one that's circled yellow, and the translation of that one in English would be this: it was Amr that Zayd hit. Okay, you'd have to use all those words. It was Amr that Zayd hit, because the stress needs to be on Amr. And if you bring Amr at the front in English and not use all of those words, then it becomes Amr hit Zayd and the meaning changes. Amr hit Zayd, the meaning changes, because now Amr is the subject. So sequence determines the grammar in English. But in Arabic, since we don't have sequence, and since the endings are what's doing it for us, so Zayd has a particular ending. And if you notice in all 6 examples, Zayd's ending is the same ending. And if you notice in all 6 examples, Amr's ending is the same ending. So Damma's on Zayd and Fatha on Amr. So this is how we know that Zayd's the subject, and it doesn't matter. All 6 of them convey the same basic meaning. So the translation of this one circled in yellow is, it was Amr that Zayd hit. Okay, if you've probably already noticed that this is also an example that could be presented for, here we go. This is an example that could be presented for highlighting the comprehensiveness of the Arabic language at the sentence level. This is the istansaru equivalent. Okay, like over there we do it at the word level using the istansaru example. And if you want to do it at the sentence level, then just list this example and show them that Amran daraba Zaydun. What in Arabic looks like 3 words is conveying actually what in English needs 6 words to convey. It was Amr that Zayd hit. Unless you're speaking like Yoda from Star Wars, because Yoda says Amr, Zayd hit. Okay, but then Yoda's restructuring of the sentence is meaningless because he does that everywhere. Isn't that right? Okay, so in order to achieve, so he's reduced the flexibility and he's restricted himself to one particular sequence. Okay, so which is unconventional. But at any rate, I mentioned that because there might be some smart pencils thinking about that. So that was, I just preempted that for you. Okay, let's continue with this. Let's proceed. So in verbal sentences, sequence does not determine grammar. So how do we determine it? We determine it by the endings. So Zayd has a particular ending and Amr has a particular ending, and it's by this ending we know Zayd's the doer, and it's by this ending we know that Amr's the object. Now it doesn't matter which one's first and which one's second. Okay, so the problem is sequence not determining grammar, and the solution is the grammatical states. Having these mental constructs. That's what they are. They're mental constructs. Rafa is a mental construct, and so is Nasab, and so is Jar. And taking the roles that the ism can occupy within the sentence and assigning them across the 3 states. So subject belongs to Rafa, Nasab belongs to, object belongs to Nasab, and the reflection for Rafa is Dhamma, and the reflection for Nasab is Fatha. So they look different. Literally, it's like he, him, and his. Okay, so that's how the problem of sequence is solved. Okay, in nominal sentences we have an entirely different issue. Okay, because subject and object presuppose verb, nominal sentences do not necessarily need to have a verb. Okay, so what is that problem? That is the lack of the is issue. Okay, because in English, if you have a long sentence, like let me give you an example. If you have a sentence such as, the ancient book written in 2500 BC by Sun Tzu is available in the bookstores. So all of those words prior to the is in English would be considered the subject. The is would divide, and available in the bookstore would become the predicate. But if I was to render that meaning into Arabic, if I was to say that in Arabic, I would not use the verb is. So how do you determine from where to where is the subject, where to where is the predicate? So this calls for another solution. Okay, okay, so now there's a minimum and there's a maximum. So if you're dealing with only 2 words, then the division is pretty easy because you just drop the is in between. Like the sentence on the left side, al-kitabu jadidun, that's a full sentence. And necessarily al-kitab would be the subject and jadid would be the object. So the lack of is sort of makes sense because there's no other option. Is when it becomes larger, then this becomes a real issue that needs to be addressed. Okay, in the 2-word sentence, the only thing you need to do is you need to be able to distinguish it from the phrase level relationship on the right side. Al-kitabul jadidu, that's a phrase, that means the new book. Notice that the words used in the sentence example and in the phrase example are identical, same words. And also notice that the sequence is the same, that the noun is at the front, adjective second in both examples. Okay, so how do you distinguish that? You'd have to know what characterizes the descriptive phrase. So part of that is that the 2 need to correspond and they have to have the same value in terms of being definite or indefinite. So if one of them is definite, the other one also needs to be definite. And we're seeing that in the Al-Kitabul Jadidu example, but we're not seeing that in the Al-Kitabu Jadidun example. Okay, so this is a topic. Like from the phrases, what we do normally in our 3 weeks is that we develop 2 of them. Okay, and there's like a dozen plus ways that words can connect together in phrase level relationships. Okay, so let's speak a little about phrases right here because I'm not going to exhaust the topic. I would normally devote 25 minutes to the possessive phrase,
and 25 minutes to the descriptive one, and that would give you all you need to know as part of the 4% of the language that gives you the broadest application. And then the rest of the phrases are covered gradually over the course of 7 to 9 weeks. And there's 12 of them. So if you know all 12 of them, then you would be able to resolve the lack of is issue, and I'll tell you that in a minute. Okay, so here are the two phrases we have on the screen. The one at the top is Kitabu Zaydin, the translation is Zayd's book, that's the possessive phrase. The other one underneath that, tall boy, that's an example of a descriptive phrase, and the new book was also an example on the previous slide. Al-Kitabul Jadidu, the new book, that's a descriptive phrase, and so is tall boy. If you look at them and compare them, you'll notice that the states of the two words in the possessive are not matching. That the first word has a different ending, and the second word, Zayd, has a different ending. So I can't give you all of the regulations that govern this type of structure, but I can tell you this, that the second half of the possessive phrase is fixed on jar. So it has a particular grammatical state, which is jar. Jar. So as we move forward, giving you 15 of the 22 places, we're going to bring this back, and we're going to say second half of the possessive structure has a particular name, which is mudaf ilayh. Okay, unfortunately I can't develop it for you here because we're short on time, so I'm going to have to press forward. So mudaf ilayh, just remember that, mudaf and mudaf ilayh. And even if you forget, don't worry, I'm going to remind you again as we get to the development of the 22 places. In the second, in the one underneath that, the descriptive, the two parts of that, the first one is the one being described, and the second word is the adjective. So that sequence is important. It's opposite of what it would be. It's opposite of how it would be done in English. You would say tall boy, but in Arabic you would say waladun tawilun, with the boy word first and the tall word second. Again, much more could be said about these two types of phrases, but we're going to need to press forward. Okay, now in nominal sentences, the issue is the lack of is issue, and this issue becomes more profound the bigger the sentence becomes. Like that Sun Tzu example I gave you, that the ancient book written by Sun Tzu in 2500 BC is available in the bookstores. So if there's no is, how are you going to determine that? Okay. The answer to this question, the solution to the lack of is issue, is you would have to know the 12 plus phrase level relationships, and you'd have to move from right to left and exhaust them. So wherever all of the phrases end, that's where the predicate begins. So how would you know from where to where is the subject and where to where is the predicate? It would be by knowing where the phrase level relationships end. That's where you drop the is. Okay, what that means is that the first word and the second word would need to be compared, and you'd have to see if there's correspondence, and you'd have to see if the regulations that apply to the various types of phrases apply. If they do, then that means your predicate hasn't started yet. You'd have to move forward. You look at the third word and try to connect that one with the previous two. So what you have is a larger phrase. And you look at the next one, and then if you see a clause developing, then that means still your predicate hasn't begun. Okay, like written in 2500 BC, so that means that the predicate has not yet started. In Arabic, we just keep moving from right to left, and where all of the extensions exhaust and where all of the phrases end, that's where the predicate begins. So this is the extent that I'm going to talk about in this presentation about the lack of is issue. Okay, because the entire total solution of it depends on knowing the 12 types of phrases, and since in the introductory theory we don't give you all 12 of them, that's why the proper solution for it is it takes about 7 to 9 weeks in order to be fully comfortable with this. In other words, to not have any trouble with this problem, and just to be able to solve it effortlessly. So that's done through the reading text. Okay. Now the components of the sentence. So now the grammar people, they recognize that we have fundamentally two kinds of sentences that in English do not exist, because in English the noun's at the very front all the time. But since in Arabic there's a possibility of the verb being at the front. Okay, so if one chooses to speak a verb, then that's what will happen. Okay, if there's no verb at all, then the noun will be at the front. Okay, now since the issue in the verbal sentence is of an entirely different kind than the issue that's in the nominal sentence, what the grammar people chose to do is, number one, they chose to classify the sentence into two categories, and number two, they chose to take the generic terms, subject and predicate, and come up with 4 more specific terms. Depending on what kind of sentence you're dealing with, the subject and the predicate will have different names. So when they appear in the nominal sentence, they're called mubtada and khabar. So in the example, the book is new, the word book would be labeled mubtada, and the word new would be labeled khabar.
in a verbal sentence, first of all, you need to know that the verb's at the front, so that's an example of the predicate preceding the subject, which in English does not happen. Okay, but in Arabic it would happen. ذهب زيد, ذهب is the predicate, and Zayd is the subject, but we're not going to say subject and predicate, we're going to say fi'al and fa'il. Fi'al literally means verb, and fa'il means doer of the verb. Okay, so like conceptually we understand that this is subject predicate, but when we address and when we speak and when we analyze and when we parse, we discard the more generic terms musnad ilay and musnad. Musnad ilay means subject and musnad means predicate, but instead we opt for the more specific terms. The reason is because when you're speaking about one issue and when you're trying to resolve that issue, the terms you use within that discussion should be specific to it and should not conflict with the terms that you would use in the other discussion, tackling the other issue, providing the different solution. So since the issues are separate and since the solutions of each are different, terminology should also be specific. And this is something you will hear nowhere else, the way I explained it here. So let's continue with this again. Let's move forward. Okay, so we're not going to speak about the lack of is issue. We're going to continue with the grammatical states. So in the previous presentation, I gave you the house example. And I showed you how Rafa means subject. Rafa is an example of, or he, him, and his. Rafa means he, Nasab means him, and Jar means his. Okay, so I'm going to bring that slide back for you, inshallah, right now. So if you look at that slide, you'll notice that the word house is being used in 3 different ways. In English, if a pronoun is used in 3 different ways, we see a difference. We see like, he came, I saw him, his pen. Okay, he came, I saw him, his pen. But in the house, in the case of the house, in the 3 sentences, if you look at the translation column, you'll notice that the word house is not changing. The house fell down. I entered the house, door of the house, 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 house. But in Arabic, when we express these meanings in Arabic, the word al-bayt would actually change based on the way it's being used. So when the house is intended to be subject of the verb, you say saqat al-baytu. And when the house is intended to be object of the verb, you say dakhaltu al-bayta. And when the house is the second half of a possessive phrase, you say babul bayti. Okay, so this slide and the introduction of the topic in the previous presentation gave the impression that Rafa meant subject, Nasab meant object, and Jar meant possessive. So it's just another way of saying subject, object, possessive, Rafa, Nasab, Jar. Now, in our second developing of the topic, what we're going to do is we're going to build on that understanding and we're going to correct some of the misconception there. So it was like, we fuzzied it because if we were to aim for accuracy in the first introduction, it would have overwhelmed the beginner. And it would have failed to create the mental imprint, which was the aim and the goal back there. Okay, so now subject, object, possessive. Rafa cannot mean subject, Nasab cannot mean object, and Jar cannot mean possessive. The reason is because if you're with us until now, you've already figured out that the total possible usages for the ism are more than just 3. If you say Rafa means subject, Nasab means object, Jar means possessive, then you restricted it to 3, and clearly that can't be true. The reason is because we have an entire other category of sentence that doesn't even have subject and object. Because both subject and object, and by the way, when I say subject, I mean doer. I don't mean musnad ilay, I don't mean subject as opposed to predicate, but I mean subject as opposed to object. Both of those presuppose verb, but since we have sentences that don't even have verbs, so you wouldn't have a subject and an object in that sentence, you would instead have a 4th and a 5th. A further possible usage for the ism. So you see then, so we've already invalidated that restriction and we've removed that misconception, and now it's a matter of knowing what's the total. Okay, so subject, object, possessive is not all there is, there's more. Okay, so the earlier 3 were subject, doer of a verb, object, and possessive. So those were the 3 that were listed on the previous slide. Saqat al-baytu, that's an example of subject. Dakhaltu al-bayta, I entered the house, that's an example of object. And babul bayti, door of the house, is an example of possessive. Other than that, in a nominal sentence we have the subject of the nominal, which has a different name, is called mubtada. And we have the predicate of the nominal sentence, which again has a different name, that's called khabar. So added on to the previous 3, so now we have 5. And in Arabic, the subject of a verb is called fa'il, the object of a verb is called maf'ul bihi, and these terms will come in the upcoming slides, and the transcript will inshallah write out for you the actual Arabic terms. And normally what I do in in the classes at the end of the introductory theory, I give them a cheat sheet. Okay, and what I mean by a cheat sheet is like a one-page document with all of the terms listed on them, all of the vocabulary, all of the grammar vocabulary. So you have the Arabic term, English equivalent, Arabic term, English equivalent, Arabic term, English equivalent. So you can just print it out and sort of just glance at it, and then it will remind you of all of the mini presentations that you will have spent considerable time developing, because that's what we do. That's the behavior that we want. In the startup phase, we want the students to listen to this again and again, and we want them to develop mini presentations. Okay, so fa'il, maf'ul bihi, and the term is coming, so don't worry about it. And I need to do this. There's no other way I'm going to get through this in 1 hour. Okay, so just bear with us. Possessive, the term for that is mudaf ilayh. And the other option was to not do it. Okay, the other option was to just give fluff and give filler and just sort of entertain. Okay, but you see, if I do that, I lose your attention, because I haven't given you any value. And my whole point behind this free series of videos is, even if you don't choose to join the program, then I still want you to feel that your time was spent well. Okay, and then if you continue your self-study, you will at least be moving much more quicker than you are now. You see? Okay. So subject of a nominal sentence is called mubtada, and the predicate of a nominal sentence is called khabar. And coming after a preposition will be a further usage, and we call that majroor. Just simply majroor, coming after a preposition, and these terms will be listed in the upcoming slides. Okay, so now we're already like much more than we started with. We started off with 3, and now we have 6. And then there's numerous types of adverbs, and again this will be developed further. And the total, so now the question is, what's the total? Okay, so we've invalidated 3, so what's the total? The new total now is 22. Okay, so number 1, why are there so many? So let's get some idea. What are the factors that contributed to this number being so large? So it's the broadness of the ism itself, because the ism is not only nouns, but the ism includes nouns, it includes pronouns, it includes adjectives, and it includes adverbs. And from these 4, the way an adverb would be used in a sentence is radically different than the way a noun would be used. Okay, like in a verbal sentence, for example, the subject of a verb must be an entity, like we mentioned earlier. So you can't take the word quickly and consider it the subject of a verb. That doesn't work, because quickly, the kind of word sort of determines its usage. Like, and the word them would be an object, and the word very, for example, would be an adjective. You see, so this is so when an ism, so since the ism is so broad, that contributes to the number being so large. Hopefully that's pretty clear. And let's continue with this. And another reason why we have so many usages is because the grammarians have classified the sentence into 2 categories, and they've chosen to come up with different terminology. So the minute our terminology increases, our number of usages increases. Okay, so they're labeled differently. So this also contributes to the number being very large. So we still don't know why it's 22, but we have some idea of why the number is large. You see, remember the onions and the peeling the layers of the onions. Okay, now some of these 22 are nominal sentence specific. In other words, they will be found only in the nominal sentence, and like the 2 halves of the 2 halves of the nominal sentence, they could be considered 2 usages for the ism. The ism can occur as a mubtada, the ism can occur as a khabar. Okay, so it's playing a role. You have an ism that's occupying the slot of the mubtada, and you have another ism that's occupying the slot of the khabar. Okay, there's certain governing agents that can come at the beginning of a nominal sentence, and it would influence the endings. It would induce change. So what was previously mubtada would no longer be mubtada, it would be called something else. And what was previously khabar would no longer be khabar, it would be called something else. And I'm going to have to leave this as a cliffhanger. I'm going to come back to this at the end of the presentation. Okay, so this is what happens. This is why the number is large in consideration of the nominal sentence. So we start off with the earlier 2 of mubtada and khabar, and then the number further, it results in the aggregators, the governing agents that can come at the front of the nominal sentence will create further usages. And again, like we're going to come back to this towards the end of the presentation. In verbal sentences, first of all, we have a who. Every verbal sentence needs to have a subject, and that would be a usage for the ism, right? It would be an ism that occupies that usage. And then many verbs would also have an object. And then there's numerous other details beyond the subject and the object, and that's all based on relevance. It's based on how much detail the speaker chooses to convey.
Okay, so he might want to answer the question when, or he might want to provide an answer to the question where, or to the question why, or to the question how, or he might want to modify the action aspect of the verb, like quickly and swiftly. Okay, he might want to bring a prepositional phrase, which is also a detail of the verb, because in the case of an action such as a movement, not only will you have a doer, you will have a destination and an origin. So whatever words you use to express the destination will be a further detail of the verb, and it will be an ism that's part of that phrase, like Basra and Kufa. So this creates a larger number. So these are possible ways an ism could be used that are specific to the verbal sentence. The first one is the subject, and that's called fa'il, and the second one is the object. And other than that, the verb could also be passive. What happens in a passive verb is the subject disappears. And in English it would be like, the apple, Zaid ate an apple, and that will be reformatted to the apple was eaten. So now in this sentence, the usage of the apple is different than it was in the previous one. Okay, so this could be considered an additional usage. And right now we're just trying to understand the large number, and then we're going to come back and we're going to tie them all together and assign them to the three states that we have already. So we're not discarding the three states. The states are the same states, Rafa, Nasab, and Jar. But the whole point behind this is to correct the inaccuracy. In the previous development of the topic, we gave the impression that Rafa meant subject, Nasab meant object, and Jar meant possessive. Now we're saying that Rafa is a broad category, and subject is an example of Rafa, and there's more. Nasab is a broad category, object is an example of Nasab, and there's more. And similarly, Jar is a broad category, and Mudaf ilayh, in other words, second half of the possessive structure, is one example of Jar, and there's more. So how are these 22 assigned? So we're going to talk about that as we move forward with the presentation. So regarding the example that's on the screen, Zaid ate an apple, the apple was eaten. So in the case of an apple, on the left side, that word tufahan is object. And in the case of the passive verb, the object occupies the place of the subject goes missing, the name changes, we call it deputy doer. So deputy doer, you can add that to the list. Okay. And then there's different kinds of adverbs, because we have a generic adverb, which is just modifying the action or explaining the degree, the intensity, or like slowly and quickly, or very, or the word extremely. Kathiran means extremely or abundantly, or even very. Farihtu kathiran, I became very happy. So we have our fi'l, which is the farih part, and then the subject is the tu, and then kathiran will be the adverb. So that's what we call a generic adverb. There's no time connotation to it. It's not answering the question where, it's not answering the question when, but it's modifying the action aspect of the verb. And then the when, where one, that has a special name. The when, where one, and that will be given to you on the upcoming slide. And the example is, today Zaid hit Amr. Today Zaid hit Amr. So the word today is modifying the time aspect of daraba. Kathiran was modifying the action aspect of daraba, and al-yawm is modifying the time aspect. So that's a kind of adverb. And then we have the reason and cause adverb. So darabtuhu means I hit him. Ta'diban means for the purpose of discipline. So in Arabic we're able to do that in a single word. In English you can't do that. You have to say for discipline. You have to bring the word for. So this is the adverb that in English should have existed but doesn't. The adverb of reason and cause. And then our last one is the circumstantial one. So you're answering the question how. Zaid came to me. How did he come? He came riding. So the word riding is an ism. You see, so it's an ism that's occupying the generic adverb. So kathiran is an ism, al-yawm is an ism, ta'diban is an ism, and rakiban is also an ism. And we're speaking about the total possible ways an ism could be used. So we're getting some idea. And it's not random either. I'm not just giving you a random listing. I spoke about the nominal sentence specific ones at the beginning, and now I'm speaking about the usages that are specific to the verbal sentence. And since prepositional phrases are also considered details of the verb, the ism that follows the preposition could be considered a further usage. So if you count the number that we're at about 11 at this stage right now. Okay, let me recap them without the slides. So the two parts of the nominal, that's mubtada and khabar. And then we have the who, in the case of the verbal sentence, that's called fa'il. And then we have the object of the verbal, and then after the object of the verbal would be the deputy doer, which is specific to the passive verb. The apple was eaten, so that's 5. And then these 4 types of adverbs
that we just gave you right now, the 4 types of adverbs. The generic one, the when, where one, the why one, and the how one, so that's 9. And object of preposition would be the 10th, and the second half of the possessive would be the 11th. 11th, like babul baiti, door of the house. So how do we distinguish between the different usages of the ism? Okay, so before jumping to the process, okay, so you know the endings. Okay, before that, many times what happens is the kind of word sort of gives it away, the type of word. Okay, let me tell you exactly what I mean by this, and you might want to listen to this portion a couple of times. If I have a verb and multiple isms, you see, so I've changed the term. I'm not saying multiple nouns, I'm saying multiple isms. And from amongst those isms, 2 of them are what the English people call noun. And then the other ones are what the English people call adverb. Right? So I have a lengthy sentence, and here's an example. I'm just making up this example. Okay, it might not be the most appropriate example, but I need to give you an example. So I hit Zaid viciously, okay, in front of the masjid yesterday. Okay, in front of the masjid yesterday. So I have viciously in there. So there's the I, and then there's the Zaid. So I is an ism, Zaid is an ism, the word yesterday is an ism, viciously is an ism, in front of the masjid. So the word in front, the word in Arabic that I would use for the word in front would be amam, and that's an adverb, that's an ism. And the word masjid is also an ism. So all of those isms. So from those isms, the I is attached to the verb, okay, in the sense that it's ending. It's darabtu Zaidan. Okay, so now or if you say Zaid hit Amr in front of the masjid viciously, leave everything the same, just take away the I and make it Zaid and Amr. From all of these, it's only the Zaid and the Amr that need to be distinguished. The rest are distinguished by the kind of word it is. So when I say al-yawm, that's automatically going to be the adverb of time, the answer to the question when. So now Amr and the word today having the same ending is fine. But Zaid and Amr having the same ending is problematic, because there we won't know, because they're both candidates, they're both capable of becoming subject and also becoming object. So they need to be distinguished. The rest of them don't need to be distinguished, because the kind of word sort of distinguishes it for you. And hopefully that makes sense, right? And if I stick in the word viciously, now that word viciously is not going to be the subject. It's the kind of word determines that it's going to be an adverb. So it can have the same ending as Amr has. And yet there will be no confusion, because Amr is, by virtue of being the entity, Amr is the object, and by virtue of being an attribute, the word viciously would need to be a further detail and not the object detail. Okay, so hopefully that was fine. And then from these 22 possible ways an ism could be used, many of them are found only in the nominal sentence and not found in the verbal, and the ones in the verbal are not found in the nominal. So what this, again, it allows us to recycle the endings. So now the ending that we give to the fa'il, which is dhamma, we can give that to the mubtada, and it's not problematic, because fa'il and mubtada will not be found together. So there's no distinguishing to do between them. So it allows the recycling of the endings. So where there is genuine confusion, where there is possibility of genuine confusion, like the 2 nouns following the verb, in which case we need to know which of the nouns is the one doing the verb and which of the nouns is the one upon whom the verb is being done. This is where the process, the mechanism, and the grammatical states come in play, and they do the distinguishing for us. So some of it's distinguished by the kind of word, and some of it's distinguished by the kind of sentence that it falls in, or it's found in. And then when you have multiple isms occurring in the same type of sentences that are candidates for being both subject and object, at that point you need the structure. So most of what I'm talking about is specific to the verbal sentence. So this is the solution to the problem that occurs in the verbal sentence, the lack of sequence determining grammar issue. Okay? Yeah, so the total amount of ways an ism could be used is 22. So although the total amount of ways an ism could be used is 22, the amount of grammatical states and endings we need is not 22. We don't need 22 different endings. Why? Because the kind of word sometimes narrows it down for us already. Okay, and then the type of sentence that it's found in narrows it down. So many of them are not found alongside each other. So we can recycle the endings, so we don't need a large number like 22. We don't need 22 different states, and we don't need 22 different endings. What we need is the bare minimum amount of endings that will resolve for us all confusion, and that number happens to be 3. Okay, so what we need to know now is how the 22 distribute into the 3, and this would end the discussion. So let's relist for you the 3 states and show you the distribution. So Rafa is a broad category that accounts for 8 possible usages of the ism. Nasab is an even broader category that accounts for 12 of the possible usages, and Jar is the smallest of the 3, and that has 2 contained within it. So subject is in Rafa, alongside subject there's 7 more. Object is in Nasab, and alongside object is 11 more. And Mudaf ilayh, the second half of the possessive structure, is in Jar, like the door of the house example, and along with that there's 1 more. So since Jar is the smaller of the 3 categories, let's proceed with that. Let's begin with Jar. So on the screen you see the 2 places of Jar, and there's no third place. The only other place in the language besides second half of possessive where a word would be considered in the state of jar and have a kasra on the last letter, as a result of which have a kasra on the last letter, is coming after a preposition, and the example is there fil bayti, in the house. In the house. And the prepositions are numbered, we know what they are. Fi is one of them, min is one of them, ala is one of them, lam is one of them. Any ism that follows a preposition will be in the state of jar, and jar does not happen anywhere else. Okay, as for rafa, the 2 halves of the nominal sentence are both in rafa. So the subject of the nominal sentence is called mubtada, and that's in rafa. The predicate of the nominal sentence is also in rafa. And for those 2 to have the same ending is not problematic, because the problem there is not one of sequence anyways. It's one of lack of is, and the solution is to know the phrase level relationships. So having the same ending does not trouble us. It does not create any confusion. And remember, the whole point behind grammar is to remove confusion, and this is why it's so important. And in a verbal sentence, the doer, the subject of a verb, that's also in Rafa, so it has a Dhamma, like we saw in the Zaydun, in the Zayd hit Amr example. Zaydun, in all 6 of those, was with Dhamma. So Fa'il is clearly belongs to Rafa. And in the passive structure, the apple was eaten, Ukilat tufahu. Ukila means was eaten, as opposed to Akala. Akala means ate, and Ukila means was eaten. Ukilat tufahu. So that's also, it also belongs to Rafa. So we have 4 currently in the Rafa, and now we're filling the slots, and we're going to get as close to 22 as we can. So now moving into the places of Nasab, we have the first one, which is the object of the verb. In Arabic that's called maf'ul bihi. Okay, and that would be Amr in the example Zayd hit Amr. Daraba Zaydun Amran. Okay, generic adverb is called maf'ul mutlaq. Mutlaq means unconditional, and it doesn't have any time aspect to it, so it's not the answer to the question when, or where, or why, or how, but yet it's modifying the verb in some way. So that's called generic adverb. The example is kathiran. In the example, farihtu kathiran, I became extremely happy. So the word extremely is what we would call a maf'ul mutlaq. And if it's answering the question when or where, then that's called maf'ul fi. And it could be time, like today, Zayd hit Amr, or in front of the masjid, or before, or after, or above, or beneath. Any of these words would be considered maf'ul fi, because they all indicate on time or place. Okay, the reason in cause one, the example of that is I hit him for the purpose of discipline. Darabtuhu ta'diban, and that's called maf'ul lahu. The circumstantial one is this hal, and the example for that is ja'ani zaydun rakiban, and rakiban means riding. Zayd came to me riding. Okay, so we have 5 added to the previous 4. Our number is now 9. And added and including the previous 2, the jar ones, we're at 11. We're at 11, and most of these are related to the verbal sentence. All 5 of the ones that you see on the screen right now occur in verbal sentences. Fa'il, naib fa'il also occurs in verbal sentences. Mubtada and khabar don't. Mubtada and khabar are the 2 halves of the nominal sentence. What else can happen in a nominal sentence? Here we go. At the beginning of the nominal sentence, you can have a certain governing agent that would abrogate the sentence. What was previously mubtada is no longer mubtada, the name changes. Okay, and this is kana. Kana is an auxiliary verb, and it means was. So first of all, when you add kana to the beginning of the book is new, the translation would change to the book was new. Okay, the translation would change. Okay, not only that, but what was previously called mubtada is no longer mubtada, because now it has a verb before it. Okay, but since it's a special kind of verb, we're going to invent new terminology to talk about it. So we're going to say, so first of all, we start off with the mubtada and the khabar. Okay, now with the introduction of kana, the sentence changes. It becomes kana al-kitabu jadidan. Pause for a minute and look at the ending of the word al-kitab, and look at the ending of the word jadid. Previously, both of them were in Rafa. Now one of them is in Rafa and the other one's in Nasab. So you see, so now we have 5 in Rafa and one more in Nasab, and we're gonna come back to that again, and I'll bring back the chart so we can see them all happening on a single screen. Okay, so the 2 halves. So the name changes. It's called Ism of Kana, and previously what was called Khabar is now called the Khabar of Kana, and what that means is the subject of the Kana sentence and the predicate of the Kana sentence, and that's pretty much it. Other than that, we have Inna, which is another governing agent, and it can come at the beginning of the nominal sentence. It will abrogate the sentence, and what that means is that what previously was Mubtada is no longer Mubtada, and what was previously Khabar is no longer Khabar, but then it's called the Ism of Inna, and the Khabar is called the Khabar of Inna, and obviously the meaning changes because Inna means indeed. So we have a new meaning, and not only do we have new meaning, but we have new usages for the Ism. So our number is getting even larger. So we're at 11. So if you take the 2 from the Kana and the 2 from the Inna, we're at 15. Okay, so here you go. Here's all 15 of them. Okay, Mubtada means the subject of the nominal. Khabar means the predicate of the nominal. Fa'il means the doer of the verb, okay, which has to follow it. Naib fa'il means the deputy doer, or you can say the subject of the passive verb. Ism of Kana is the first portion of the Kana structure, the book example in the example, Kan al-kitabu jadidan. And Khabar of Inna is the second half of the Inna structure. So if you take the 2 that resulted from Kana and the 2 that resulted from Inna, you would take the first of the Kana and the second of the Inna, place them in Rafa. You would take the second of the Kana and the first of the Inna and place them in Nasab. So in Nasab we have quite a few. We have 7 in Nasab now. Maf'ul bihi being the first one, object of a verb. Maf'ul mutlaq, generic adverb, like very and swiftly and quickly and extremely. And then maf'ul fi is the answer to the question when and where. Okay, maf'ul lahu is the reason and cause one, like for the purpose of discipline. Hal is the Zayd came to me riding, circumstantial adverb. Okay, and then again, the second half of the Kana structure, the first half of the Inna structure. And jar category is closed. And the 2 that occupy the jar category, number 1, second half of a possessive structure, mudaf ilayh, and number 2, any ism that follows a preposition, and that's simply called majroor. And this concludes what we would do in the introductory theory. At this stage we would begin the book. And here I've created a scan for you from the Stories of the Prophets book, the Qasasun Nabiyyin book, and if I had time I would give you another half an hour and speak about the structures here, and I would bring all of that theory to life. So every word here, so if you in these 4 or 5 lines, you would see at least 20 examples, and all of the theory that you just learned would solidify every time you saw it. So this is like the first 4 lines. Okay, but at this stage I'm not able to do that. I'm gonna have to stop here. Okay, but I will tell you how to take this to the next level. As you know, I've been doing this for the last 10 years, and there's a certain book in grammar, which is 132 pages. It's called Hidayatun Nahwu, and I've taught it at this stage 22 times. Okay, I reteach it every year, 3 times, and I never delegate any aspect of its teaching. And every time I teach it, my energy levels increase, and my understanding of the text and my insights also increase. Okay, and one would not expect that. One would think that if you're teaching the same book over and over again, 3 times a year, and you've taught it so many times, then your interest level would probably diminish and decrease, and your enthusiasm will also go low. But in my case, alhamdulillah, that's not what happens. But instead, I get more energetic, and the tone of my voice changes, and the students, they notice this from me, and they really love that intensity in my voice. So if what I shared with you in the last 10 days, with the report and the content pieces, if it resonated with you, and if it increased your desire to master this language, this divine language, so that you can understand all of the messages of Allah, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala intended for you, and be able to understand and appreciate your prayers, then I invite you to join this program that I will personally be conducting myself, and we will be opening registration for it in a couple of days from now. If this is something that excites you, then you can click the link below and join the early bird list. So this will pretty much guarantee for you a spot, and it will allow you to join the program before anyone else. And if you're not at that level, then that's totally fine, because we will be continuously reproducing this free material, and I'll be more than happy to share that with you also in the upcoming weeks and months. So with all of that said, I really enjoyed creating this free series of videos for you, and I hope you enjoyed them also, and I look forward to talking to you soon. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.